The story begins with someone shouting that they hate this. At that moment, a blue aura seems to return to the body. The boy opens his eyes and suddenly rises from the bed. Obviously out of breath, you can already imagine what happened. He's wondering if he hadn't died and why his body feels warm again. Besides that, his hand had no calluses as if it were 10 years ago. That's when he looks around and realizes he's in the university dormitory. Immediately, he grabs the pillow, takes his phone and sees a girl dancing. He unlocks the bed and notices there are no scars on his face. You already know what happened. Yep, the bastard reincarnated. Right before the apocalypse starts. He remembers what happened when he became the 10th war god of Dragon City. 2 other war gods from the neutral field invited him to party. However, in the middle of the conversation, suddenly a high-level zombie broke in. In the moment he was fighting the creature, he was struck from behind, and the 2 Dan war gods helped the creature kill him. Then a girl approaches and asks Lindsay if he liked the gift he received from her family. On the ground, he asks why she is there. That's when he found out that demons had made a deal with the Lee family. The girl named Yo Jing was the prettiest in school, and he was always happy to have her by his side. What he didn't know was that she was only with him under orders from the young master of the Lee family. They used him as much as they could, and when he started getting too strong, they finished him off. This was after he helped the Lee family become one of the 3 biggest in Dragon City. But now he's back in the present. With the combat power he had, he could easily have gotten rid of the Lee family. However, he never imagined he'd be betrayed like that. But now he's back at the moment when she was still just his girlfriend. Then he receives a message on his phone. Yo Jing says she's going to give some lessons to children, so she won't be able to celebrate his birthday with him. However, poor Lindsay already knows that at this time the only lesson she was giving was through the touch of the Lee family. On that date, he received a video gift that was unforgettable. Man, it seems our boy was a major cuckold. He says it's fine, but that first he wants to meet her in the shed behind the school because he misses her. She says she'll go because it's his birthday, but it has to be quick. He knows that the guy she's involved with, called Lai Hao, seems to want revenge against him because of things his father did long ago. On that day in the past, he had planned a lot of things to celebrate with Yo Jing. However, what he got was a video that humiliated him. But now the rascal is reborn and won't let that tragedy happen again. Outside, everyone was wondering why the sky was red. Obviously, no one suspected the apocalypse was coming. But Lindsay knows that at 7 in the evening is when it would all begin. And the people there don't know that very few of them would survive. He then heads to the school's shed. He angrily opens the door. At the back of the room is Yo Jing sitting on a chair. She says he has to be quick because she has to teach the kids. But he already pulled the blade from up his sleeve and says not to hurry as he's going to deliver a little gift now. Slowly, he starts getting closer, and she tells him to spit it out because otherwise she's leaving as she has better things to do. But suddenly, he grabs her by the throat. Now desperate, she calls him a crazy psychopath and tells him to let her go. But he says that on the 16th of March, she spent 53,000 at a modern hotel in Modu. Right after, on the 29th, she spent another 109,000 yuan. Confused, Yo Jing keeps asking what he's talking about. He continues talking about dates and amounts she's been spending. That's where she starts realizing that these hotel names all seem familiar. He then says that on the 13th of April, she spent 409,000 at the Magic Bar. That's when she realizes these were all records of the dates she met with Lai Hao. At that moment, she asks him to wait a moment that she's going to explain everything. He responds that he's very eager for that explanation. He grabs her phone and unlocks it. There's a message from Lai Hao saying she's excited to meet him and telling her that the fool believed she was going to teach the children. Obviously, that's all Lindsay needed to see. He then suddenly releases her, puts her on the ground, and plays a video. Before the video starts, he says Lindsay is the foolish boyfriend and congratulates him. A second later, the video says exactly the same words, wishing him a happy birthday. In the video, she asks why he believed that a beauty from the school like her would fall in love with a loser orphan like him. Terrified, Yo Jing starts wanting to know how he already knew the whole message before hearing it. Lindsay keeps repeating the message. She says that if it weren't for Lai Hao, she never would have gotten involved with trash like him. The poor thing is going crazy. She didn't send that video to anyone, so how does he already know? She then says in the video that if it weren't for him, she never would have gotten involved with Lai Hao. Then she thanks the loser. That's when she realizes everything had been revealed. Lindsay just keeps staring. If the next question is whether she isn't curious about how he knows all of this, she stands still for a second and pushes his arm, telling him to go to hell. However, Lindsay says that's exactly where she belongs. And man, I thought he was going to forgive her, but the boy doesn't go easy at all. The girl turns into a bowling ball and falls to the ground like a piece of trash. With that, our guy lets out a sigh. He falls to the ground, kneeling, emotional because it took him 10 years to achieve this. He starts laughing, saying he was deceived for 10 years, but he finally did it. She had paid the price for everything she did to him. But obviously, that wasn't enough. Now it was time to kill that damned Lai Hao who's hiding in the Lee family. And that's when the famous overpowered system shows up in the apocalypse. He looks at his phone and sees it's 6:05. It was supposed to all start at 7, so why was the system already showing up? The system only says it's there to provide a better gaming experience. Some digital circles begin appearing around him, and then the system tells him to request his first ability. Not just an ability, but actually a super hack. What he receives is the absolute item drop. This makes it so that any creature he kills has a 100% chance of dropping an item. Considering that everyone else only has a 1% chance, this was clearly overpowered. While others would have to kill hundreds of zombies for everyone he killed, he gets stronger. It was so good that he even asked the system if he can trust this. The status window activates and it clearly shows his super hack is turned on. At that moment, he's already excited about how strong it is. The guy who translated this must think I'm a magician to read this stuff upside down, you bastard. But what matters is that our dear Lin Z is pumped to destroy the Lei family. The only problem is that he's just a lonely orphan, while those guys have a giant family. Not only do they have tons of soldiers, but also some secret techniques. Not to mention, he's always wanted to know exactly why the Li family hated him. The plan before was to gradually get stronger without anyone knowing and only then attack that family. But now, with these hacks, he won't have to wait so long. With that, he leaves the shed and our boy doesn't forgive his waifu. No, sir. The kid got his revenge in 2 chapters. Outside, everyone's finding the sunset beautiful, talking about how they need to make a heart and take a nice photo. Our boy laughs, saying they have no idea that soon enough they'll be eating each other and not in a good way. But the rascal is heading to the Love Hotel. He gets there, asks for an hour in a room, 3 bottles of water, and 5 buns. The guy says okay and gives him a price of $40. Our boy says to send the talented and hardworking number 3. Already in the room, he knows there are 5 minutes left for everything to start. He remembers that in his past life, this number 3 became a zombie boss. Luckily, he managed to finish her off, and that's how he began to evolve. Obviously, this is the best option, so he's going to repeat it, especially considering the system's talent. Someone at the door says number 3 wants to enter for the service. She comes in, all dangerous, saying he's handsome, so it's going to be worth it. But she stops for a second and is startled. She approaches our boy and asks why he's wearing so many clothes over his epidermis. She's not a traveler, but she already wants to explore the mountains and asks what he's waiting for. But our Sigma boy tells her to take a shower first. As soon as she leaves, he notices she has that rotten zombie smell. Before the apocalypse began, you could tell who was going to turn just by that smell. The trap approaches the door. Inside, she's telling him to stop stalling, as she knows he wants some water fun. But our boy drags it out, so she turns off the shower. Right at that moment, his phone rings, signaling it's 7 o'clock. In the same second, her body begins to be infected. Her pupils dilate and she starts getting green skin, already making those classic zombie noises. Our boy opens the door and sees her transforming. She reacts immediately and turns toward him, running to disarm him. But with 10 years of experience, he just gives 1 strike to the neck. The poor thing's head hits the floor. The system even shows the window saying she's dead. He lets out a sigh. And here comes the system, right, my boy? With that, he finally receives the welcome to the apocalypse game. Once it's activated, there's no stopping it, and he has to find a way to evolve. Zombies have excellent hearing but terrible vision. 80% of the unlucky ones instantly became zombies. To help him out, the system offers more tips. Killing creatures would help him level up, which would allow him to gain new abilities, attributes, and talents. Besides that, every creature he killed had a small chance of dropping an item of various ranks. Furthermore, all scientific advances and human weapons were going to be useless, so it was best not to even try using them. Not to mention, it would be impossible to communicate with any kind of human-made device. If you got bitten, you turn into a zombie. Moreover, it was best not to go out at night since the zombies were much stronger. The system says it's given enough tips and that they'll probably only talk again in about 7 days. The last tip the system gives is that for now, the zombies are all pretty weak, so it was good for him to take this chance to evolve a lot. Lastly, the system wishes him good luck and tells him to enjoy the game. A window then pops up for him to enter a name. Our dear Lin Z decides to use the name Jia Yi. It must have something to do with revenge from what the guy said. With that, he is congratulated for killing a zombie and receives 1 experience point and 1 gold coin. Man, wasn't that supposed to be the zone boss? Besides that, he was the first player to kill a zombie and earns the First Blood achievement. In his past life, he didn't get any of these global achievements. But in this one, he's already gotten the first. The system announced to everyone that Jia Yi was the first person in the world to kill a zombie and earn that achievement. A blonde girl named Ji Yao is shocked that she hasn't even finished reading the message and people are already killing. And another guy named Gao Ji says it's crazy that someone is faster than him. In this system, you can evolve strength, mind, physique, and agility. He's impressed by the base stats and already knows it must be because of that achievement. Besides that, the prestige stat is used so that in the future, you can get more discounts and buy different items. And the first talent also makes his first attack after midnight every day deal double damage. After going through all this system stuff, he decides to check the loot. From the first zombie, he got a meditation necklace that gives 1% more mind and 10% more recovery. His eyes light up, seeing that the 100% drop really works. It seems the hack is separate from the system, since it warns him to be careful, so the real system doesn't find out he has it. But seeing the necklace, he knows that for now, he needs to get as strong as possible. And the best place to start cleaning up is this building. He then starts walking down the hallway. Something catches his attention. There's a racket coming from one of the rooms. Slowly, he approaches, turns the handle, and inside he finds a transformed guy. Obviously, this is a zombie of a guy who went to the gym, so it's a bit stronger. But for him, it's still extremely weak. He dodges the first attack, ducks under the second, and finishes it by going straight for the throat on the third. However, even after being struck, the creature still tries to charge at him, and the guy grabs its face, but he dodges with a quick spin. With that, the second zombie was killed. However, our boy is sad that he didn't manage to kill it with just one attack. As always, the 100% drop comes, and there's another little box. Inside, there was a card that was a voucher for cooked steak that, when activated, the food appears in front of him. Obviously, it wasn't very rare, but it wasn't bad to have food either, so he stores it in his inventory. He approaches a suitcase on the floor and takes out a photo of the guy with his daughter. Seeing that the guy had an axe, you could tell he was a mechanic. He checks room 208 and then 207. He doesn't find anything and heads to the door of room 206 and kicks it in. He shouts that it's time to clean up, but he's confused by what he sees. The couple was so eager that even as zombies, they continued their fun. Our boy even closes the door, saying he forgot the activities of that place. But he opens it again and says it's crazy they're doing that even as zombies. The angry zombie lunges at him. He dodges, saying he wasn't trying to spy. The big guy keeps coming at him. He says he's too arrogant for someone so weak and delivers a blow to the head, hitting him right in the eye. The other one tries to come from behind, but the boy has swag and kills without even looking. 2 more experience points and 2 more gold coins. And best of all, 2 more loot boxes. Now the rascal realizes that this thing really works. In his past life, 100 zombies were equal to a bottle of water. While in this one, nothing is better than having luck on your side. He receives 2 cards that activate an ability that allows him to detect movements within 10 meters. Since he's in a place full of rooms, he uses it right away. Then someone climbs to the 2nd floor, saying that Bastard is making too much noise. Tells him to kneel down or he'll get smacked like a son. But Lindsay easily dodges. And if you think he's going to let that punch go for free, you're very wrong. The chubby guy spins around, telling him to stop dodging and start begging for forgiveness. Our boy says it would have been better if he had turned into a zombie because at least that would have given him some experience. It's a pity, but he had to end it now. What a ruthless guy. He paints the corridor red. Still a psychopath, he says that in the apocalypse, you can't leave loose ends. And the reason for this death was the guy being so weak. He starts going to various rooms, knocking on the doors, asking to be let in. Obviously, no one opens, so he goes to another and says the delivery has arrived. But none of that is working. As he approaches one door, he hears a disgusting sound, and he gets excited, saying there's a zombie in there. He shoulder barges the door open and finds a big guy already transformed inside. He tries to land a hit, but this one is agile and manages to dodge. The zombie tries to claw at him, but he ducks. Taking advantage of being on the ground, he pulls off a capoeira move. With the zombie's arms raised, he slashes its throat. With that, another one is down, and as always, he gives another item. This time, he had earned a liquor. With that, he continued rummaging through the rooms. Eventually, he found one for himself since it wasn't a good idea to go out at night. He took off his jacket, and who would have thought, our boy is fully leveled up. The system notified him that he needed 6 more experience points to reach level 3. The problem was that when he looked at his phone, he saw that 8 o'clock was approaching, and the zombies would evolve, causing him to miss the chance to level up. Knowing how dangerous it would be to survive the night without that, he rushed out looking for 6 more zombies. In the shed, he saw a message from girl number 3 that would solve the problems. If there's a number 3 and he's already killed another, that means there's one more. Since zombies had good hearing, there was an easy way to find them, by hammering until they came to him. He then hears a sound in a room at the back. He enters, and inside, the room seemed empty. But then, from one of the vents, he starts hearing a noise, and he says it's crazy that they hid so quickly. On the stairs, there are 2 zombies trying to climb up. However, they have poor control over their bodies and end up falling off. With that, one smashes into the other like 2 idiots. Our boy feels sorry for their hard work, but for him, what mattered was something else. He quickly goes down and finishes off the girl. At that moment, another one comes from behind, but easily he turns and finishes another one. 2 more experience points, and now the problem is that his knife is starting to get dull. But look at that golden glow coming in to give him that little item for sure. He receives a horizontal cutting sword from the Tang Dynasty, as well as 2 delicious buns. The sword gave him 1 more strength point and even removed 10% of the target's defense. He knows that soon these weapons won't be worth anything, but for now it's great to have something like that. More water is stored in his inventory. 10 minutes remain before the real madness began. With no other choice, he had to take a risk on the streets. As soon as he opened the door, he found some poor sap who was about to be sent to the afterlife. The zombies noticed him right away and started running toward the hotel. But at level 1, they were still dumb and bumped into the door. The others came from behind and ended up tripping like fools. In his past life, he spent the first day drinking and hiding out of fear. He only fought the level 2 zombies, which were much smarter. But in this life, he got the perfect chance. In 1 second, with the new katana, he wiped out the entire group. For the start of the game, the quality of that weapon was excellent. With those zombies taken down, he advanced to level 3 and received another attribute point. Then he heard another zombie sound. Another one approached, and he realized that this one seemed a bit smarter. Or maybe not that smart because she walked right into the sword. But at least it was worth it, as she dropped a skill book. Then his alarm went off. At 8 p.m., something had arrived. In the same second, he felt something and immediately stepped back. An explosion occurred at the hotel's entrance. It was another level 1 zombie, but now affected by the power of the night. The system tells him to be smarter with time because now everything had become more dangerous. He knows that this zombie will continue getting stronger for the first minute. And since he knows this, he has to finish it before it follows him into the room. He goes in for a full-force strike, but even with the upgraded sword, it gets stuck. He puts his other hand on it to try to push it through. But man, the zombie exerts force and pushes it out. Our boy has to retreat immediately. And the worst part is now he only has his small axe left. He's not crazy enough to get close, so he throws it like a boomerang. Man, it gets lodged right into the damn thing. While the creature is still distracted, he gets closer to grab the katana. He quickly pulls it out and slashes. The creature is already covered in cuts, but it's still intact. It stares at him and starts running toward him again. A second of silence for the artist who was fired by Chapter 10, because the art style had completely changed. But we're still continuing from the same moment. Our boy steps back and swings again, hitting the neck. Finally, the damn thing falls to the ground. At least these zombies are drawn better than the others. Our boy begins collecting all the items, especially since he can't be seen by anyone else. After 8 p.m., zombies are at least 50% stronger. He starts piling the bodies at the entrance, afraid that more creatures might approach, especially since he made a lot of noise, so there's a good chance others will come. He activates some sort of sentry, which will turn red as soon as a creature appears. With that, he can finally relax and decides to take a bath. It's time to open the 4 boxes he had received. A night ring, a bottle of mineral water, and 2 eyes of approval. He can't get used to this life of luxury, considering how much he starved in his past life, especially the night ring, which increases agility by 1 and reduces his presence by 30%. It was finally time to take a look at what skill he'd get from that book. The system congratulates him and informs him that in this world, anyone can have unlimited skills. But the reason for that is because it's extremely difficult to obtain one of these books. Usually, between levels 10 and 80, people typically receive 3 skills. And the worst part is that many of these skills don't even suit the people who get them. In the past world, the guy known as the God of Skills had 25 after 10 years of fighting in the apocalypse. In his final moments, he had reached 10 skills and was stronger than 99% of people. But the most important thing about all this is how good the skill you receive is. And then comes what Lindsay got, the boomerang slash skill. Basically, he can throw his weapon, dealing 120% damage. He's excited since the best skills are always the damage-dealing ones. Even though for now it has a long cooldown. As his mind attribute increases, that will decrease. The system asks if he wants to learn the skill. Obviously, he accepts immediately, and he decides to test the skill. But as soon as he stands up, his stomach growls. It's better to eat something first. Luckily, his inventory is full of options, so he eats, saying that this food tastes like something from a 5-star restaurant. Look at the boy organizing everything. The table is even clean. Looking at the movie, he knows that in this life he's going to have to do things differently, or he'll fail again. He opens the system and grabs a pen. On a sheet of paper, he writes Warrior and Mage. The difference between the classes is that when you level up, the points go to different stats. For example, a mage every time they level up gains 2 mind attributes. Additionally, there are secret professions like Ghost, which 1 in 100 people usually receive. In the past life, without much knowledge, he managed to get it, so it probably won't be that hard this time. And in this world, you usually activate the profession system when you reach level 10. The Ghost profession specializes in assassination and adds points to strength and agility. He begins writing down all the classes he remembers from the people who became war gods. Looking at the stats, he wonders which would be the best option. He then puts 3 more points into strength and 2 into agility, and starts trying to recall all the times he encountered a paladin knight. He also remembers a diamond item. With that, he spends the night trying to recall all the treasures and experiences that could help him. The scene shifts to a mansion. Someone throws a vase against the wall. A blue-haired guy says he can't calm down with the whole planet being ruined because of Yo Jing. Because of her delay, the material hadn't worked out, and he won't be able to finish off that damn Lin Z. Not to mention to him, this damned apocalypse is nonsense. The butler asks him to calm down as making so much noise could attract zombies. But Lai Ho just asks if it wouldn't be better to send that trash Lin Z to meet his father already. The butler knows the boy is trying to eliminate any future competition for the position of family leader. The problem is that with the start of this apocalypse, he needs to control his personality or he'll suffer. Lai Ha then asks if his father's team of mercenaries isn't coming to find him. Once they arrive in the city of Amodu, they can meet up with those bastards. Later, he's going to find that damn Yo Jing, even if she's dead, and bring her corpse to make that damn Lin Z suffer. The butler says all of that would be possible since the mercenaries were trained to obey him. Imagining the scene, he gets all excited. Meanwhile, our boy is coughing. Already prepared, he jumps out of the hotel. Outside, as expected, it's full of zombies. But in daylight, they're still much weaker. He draws the katana and uses boomerang slash. This way, He kills several creatures in the city until he finally reaches level 4. For that bunch of level 1 zombies, it was all too easy for him. Not to mention the combination of the skill and that sword was perfect. The only problem is always the high cooldown, which is making him waste a lot of time. He then decides it's time to do the most important thing. Obviously, opening all the boxes he had received. In one of them, there was an attribute item. Actually, this story is crazy because what it contained was a bronze item that upgrades equipment. Lindsay gets excited, saying this is useful. He immediately uses the item on his sword. With that, it becomes a Tang Sword +1. Now instead of ignoring 10% of defense, it ignores 15%. The points he earned immediately go into strength, and in a nearby box, the system congratulates him for winning a hidden mask. It allows him to hide his level and basic information for 30 minutes and can be used twice a day. Considering that he doesn't want to be discovered, it was a very useful item. He equips it and the system congratulates him. Man, this boy is lazy. He killed the zombies and laid on the ground. He knew he needed to rest to reach level 5 before nightfall and challenge a certain place. Obviously, we're talking about the legendary dungeon, right? The author said it's not going to have everything and it's sticking to the same story, man. Besides the normal dungeons, there are unique ones that can only be done once and have better items. But for now, it was time to head to Lychee Village. He also dropped a precise watch and equipped it right away. With that, he continued on, finishing off a few more zombies. Walking through the village, it seemed empty. He quickly noticed a door with a massive lock. Man, but his blade was sharp. He just gave it a slice. He entered the house and started looking through the rooms. Then behind a door, he saw a red puddle. Slowly, he opened it, and at that moment, a hand came toward him. With his little sword and now level 5, he easily cut it off. But something caught his attention, and when he looked to the side, there was a hand coming through a door. Man, the zombie went crazy and broke through as well. But our boy calmly slapped each one. He kept walking through the house, and at the back, he saw a girl in a family photo. If I'm not mistaken, this is the one who was called Ji earlier. He walks down the corridor saying that in this world, you can't show sympathy for anyone. He opens the system to grab a meal to eat, and as always, he sets up a banquet. Man, I've never seen an apocalyptic protagonist as chill as this one. He looks at his phone and sees that on the way to the dungeon, he'll probably reach level 5. He's tired of resting and gets up. He hears some noises and approaches the door. He knew he wasn't going crazy because he heard footsteps. Meanwhile, outside is Gaoji, the guy with the nose bandage, and Jiyao, the girl with glasses. They could smell the good food inside and were curious to know how that was possible, while our boy was just listening from the side, preparing to leave the house. Jiyao said the wrong move is stealing from others like that. Gaoji says they're not going to steal. They'll just ask. If he doesn't hand it over, they'll beat him up. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But our boy is just watching Jiyao from behind, observing all this. And this guy isn't known for letting others walk away alive. Another one of them, Jikaji, says the boy is a thief because he broke into their house. Jiyao was angry because when her parents and brother became zombies, she locked everything up and ran away. Now she came back starving that the guy took everything. Excited, she says fine, they'll have to take a little from him too, until blood falls on her face. Man, our boy doesn't waste time and whipped the idiot right in the back. What a move, the guy was sent straight to the afterlife. This boy doesn't forgive anyone. Lindsay says he was trying to save energy but couldn't let them attract more zombies to the area. Man, he throws the katana flying and finishes off the girl too, my friend. He even kills another one. Man, even I'm scared of this protagonist. He's not letting anyone live. I introduce everyone's names thinking they'd last more than 2 chapters. Our boy looks at Jikaji and says that someone who abandoned their sister is a waste of life. He had to finish them off since they were planning to rob him. This guy is seriously unhinged. He walks away saying the government should reward him for his pure actions. And with that, the house was wiped out. The street, as always, was full of zombies. Some were climbing a building. From the window, a woman says she sees a superhero. Another one shows up and tells her to hide so the zombies will stop gathering against them. But you can bet that outside, an expert was passing through everything. The problem was that it wasn't possible to see his name and title as he leveled up. The girl says that's irrelevant. They should shout and ask that guy to save them. My friend, I don't know you, but if I could give you a tip, don't call for this guy. He's more dangerous than anyone. But the husband says that if he's hiding his information, something's off. Suddenly, our boy receives some hearts and a little dance on his phone. And from the top floor, a girl appears, calling out to her big brother, obviously offering help in exchange for being saved. But our boy completely ignores her and continues down the street. For him, those little items on the ground were much more important. The girl starts cursing him, saying she has over 30,000 fans, so he shouldn't be ignoring her. The crazy one says she'll make him pay and grabs a vase. Girl, don't do that. You don't know who you're throwing that at. But there she goes on her way to the next life. Obviously, our boy senses something strange. He steps aside, and the vase crashes to the ground. She turns all sweet, saying she's just upstairs and scared of the zombies, so he needs to save her. She even offers to hold his hand. Girl, I don't think he's very interested in that. He then pulls a piece of meat soaked in zombie virus from his inventory and throws it at her. That thing has the effect of attracting any creature within 100 meters. But the girl isn't happy with that at all and starts cursing, asking if he didn't understand that she wanted to be saved. until suddenly, she hears a noise behind her. There was a horde of zombies attracted by the meat, and with that, another victim of our boy. The crazy girl was even live streaming on TikTok in the middle of the apocalypse. Soon we're going to need a new protagonist to take down this one. A horde of zombies then started throwing themselves off the building, heading in his direction. The creatures fell to the ground all twisted, but he kept walking calmly. He then made his way to the Mudu Gymnasium. That was the place he had been looking for. And in 2 hours, when night falls, it would be the perfect time to enter. He knew that besides that, there was a wild silver-ranked chest in that place. The system displayed a warning saying that when you see that sign, it means there's some special system happening. Wild chests were a type of treasure that could appear anywhere, and anyone could open them. On the other hand, a boss chest contained much rarer items, but at the same time it was much harder to obtain. As soon as he entered the gym, he received his first mission, to defeat 100 zombies on his own. The problem was that in that place, there were only level 2 zombies, and killing 100 of them wasn't an easy task. The initial plan was to sneak around grabbing each of the chests, but now that he got the mission, he'd have to do it. However, being lazy, he asked the system what would happen if he just ignored this objective. The system said that if he declined the mission, he'd receive 100 gold coins as compensation, but obviously, the reward for completing it would be much better. He then went to a room and broke the lock. Inside, he found the basketball zombie, and it was time to start the 100 kills. As always, a step forward and a stab to the face. But man, the thing tanked the stab. He had to deliver another one to the mouth. At least that bastard finally dropped the basketball. Our boy finds it ironic that the guy must have turned into a zombie while playing basketball and continued with the ball in his hand. And as always, the 100% drop box came. He gave the body a little kick and went to grab his super flashbang. Obviously, it's just a flashbang but super. Not much mystery there. But he got excited since for invading other people's houses, it's the perfect item. He also found the key to the gym's center. That was good because he wouldn't have to destroy the door and could enter quietly without attracting everyone. With that, he calmly moved in. He observed the area, which was full of zombies. In the darkness, the creatures were all slow and blind. Williams ran to the ping pong table and hid underneath. From there, he started counting and discovered there were 17 zombies just in that room. It was a dangerous chance, but it also meant 17 item boxes. If he could be silent, no other zombie would come in. He only needed 4 more to reach level 5, and then everything would become easier. One was walking right by, and he decided that would be the first. He gave a whip to the back of its neck. The first one fell to the ground, and with a noise, all the others were alerted. They immediately turned toward Lin Zi. Now the horde was rushing toward the boy, but the rascal was under the ping-pong table, chilling. They came closer and he whipped 3 of them in the legs. The boy jumped out from under the ping-pong table with a maneuver. Not sure why he did all that swag, but he landed right behind them. He dashed forward and finished another one. With that, he completed 4 zombies and advanced to level 5. Now he needed 100 experience points to level up. Knowing he was in a tight space, he'd need more agility. He placed the point and climbed onto the table. With that, all the zombies started heading toward him. But since they were dumb, they got stuck at the edge, and it was easy for him to whip them in the face. Meanwhile, someone was watching from behind the door. A guy in a red shirt and bandana said he was an unlucky guy. Man, I agree with you, and if I could give you a tip, it would be to run away from here. The biggest danger has arrived. But the crazy guy was excited, thinking that a person who kills so many zombies must have a lot of resources. His plan was to wait for our boy to die so he could take everything, but that wasn't happening. The number of zombies was decreasing, and the blonde guy realized he'd have to help our boy die. He'd do the great favor of bringing more zombies to help send him to the afterlife. At that moment, another one entered the room. Lindsay was thinking he made too much noise, and now someone was banging on the door where the blonde guy was hiding. Seeing the door damaged, he knew it wouldn't last much longer. He needed to eliminate the zombies in front of him and quickly retreat. But at that moment, 3 of them jumped at him. The Parker King pulled off another stylish move and spun away. The problem was that more and more zombies were arriving. Man, he made a shish kebab with 3 of them. He ran to rest under the table and saw that nearby he had picked up a single-use potion that would restore 20% of his energy and an additional 5% per minute for 5 minutes. For him, who was tired, it was perfect. As soon as he got up, he threw the sword, finishing off another one. This time, he saw a strange black box and quickly ran to grab it. Inside, there was a bracelet that allowed him to summon a spike skill once a day. He knew skill equipment was rare and equipped it immediately. At that moment, the door finally collapsed and a horde of zombies began approaching. But for him who had just gotten that item, it was the perfect moment. A bunch of zombies was coming his way. He jumped onto the table and waited for them to get closer. Then he leaped over them all and activated the bracelet. From the ground, a ton of giant spikes suddenly emerged, and he said that now the game had really begun. Several spikes kept shooting out of the ground, taking down the zombies. That ability was as powerful as a level 20 mage's. More zombies came from behind, but the spikes easily finished them off. It looked like that thing was going to keep killing, and he didn't need to do anything. He received a bunch of items and experience, and the ability went into cooldown. The system explained it would take 24 hours to use it again, but he could also use mental energy to strengthen it. And as always, it was the best time of day to collect all the boxes. He found a Fortnite bazooka that allowed him to throw any object 30 meters away, as well as boots that increased movement speed by 20% for 10 seconds. The number of attributes he had was greater than someone who had already unlocked a class. This meant that at this rate, he had at least double the status points of most people. Another wave of zombies started approaching. He loaded that piece of meat soaked in zombie virus into the bazooka, fired it, and it drew all the creatures' attention. They moved to the corner of the room, and he activated the boot's ability, easily leaving the fools behind. Sometime later, he was sitting on the stairs, exhausted. There was only 1 hour left until 8 p.m., and he knew how dangerous this place would become. First, this lazy madman needed to find a place to rest. He kept walking down the corridors using the master key he had received. But before opening a door, he wondered why it was locked from the inside. He knew this was the gym's infirmary, and considering the time it closed, it shouldn't have been locked. He opened it, hoping he wouldn't find another idiot who wanted to kill him. Slowly, he entered the room. And immediately, there was a sword at his neck with someone asking why he had the key to that place. But our boy just grabbed the arm and squeezed the wrist. With that, the blonde guy dropped the knife, and our boy said he messed with the wrong person. A step back, and he twisted the guy's arm. I thought he'd finish him off right then, but instead he stuffed a cloth into his mouth. He opened his inventory, grabbed a curtain, covered the window, and told them to turn on the lights. Out of nowhere, a nurse appeared, saying that turning on the lights would attract a lot of zombies. He didn't give her a choice, and another person in the back of the room ended up turning them on. If I had to bet, only the girl in the tights would survive. The blonde guy recognized our boy as the person who had been killing a bunch of zombies, and he had wanted to steal the loot. And Lindsay told him to stop looking at him arrogantly when he was so weak. "Come closer, my blonde friend. I think you're headed for your next life." Our boy said he doesn't like people who hold grudges and slashed the guy's neck. The people in the infirmary were all terrified, and somehow the girl had lost her tights out of nowhere. Our boy then pulled a knife from the guy's sleeve, said that this guy had been preparing to kill him, and told them not to worry. He's a good person. Of course, everyone agreed, saying, yes, he's definitely a great person. But in truth, they were all scared to death. Lindsay said he's a reasonable person, and that if they didn't try anything against him, he wouldn't kill anyone. Then someone stepped forward. Could it be that our boy finally gained some company, or will there be another strike and another victim? The girl put her tights back on, came forward, and said everyone saw that the boy deserved it. She asked the others, and they agreed, saying, yes, of course, he deserved it. Lindsay smiled, saying it was good to know everyone agreed with him. He realized he was much more tired than he had been in the morning. As a good lazy person, he told everyone to clean the room because he wanted to rest. Obviously, no one was going to go against the boy. He wrapped the blonde guy up and buried him in the ground. Our boy was just watching the queen of the tights, saying he had seen her somewhere before. She was still at level 0, and her name was Zhang Yexu. When he saw the name, he seemed to recognize it. In the past life, when he was down and out, she had already received a legendary profession known as the God Doctor. All messed up, he had told her he'd do anything if she could heal his wounds. But she warned him that the wound on his face involved the soul and couldn't be treated. Every time he was messed up, he found her and asked for treatment. Her weakness was that even though her profession was really good, it made her nothing more than a tool for others. She remembers that in the future, she ended up becoming a very different person than she is now. Maybe it was fate that brought them together again. Suddenly, they heard a sound coming from the air outside the door. Everyone armed themselves, watching to see what would appear, while Lindsay was calmly looking at his watch. Then he pulled out 3 cards and placed a feast on the table. Man, he started eating. Obviously, everyone in that room had been starving for a day and was drooling. Yexu swallowed hard, asked where he got that food, and if they could have a little. Our boy smiled, saying it looked like she had fallen into his trap. He said that to get a little of that, she'd have to help him. Everyone was still excited, but the queen of the tights said to just tell her what he wanted. While she was already afraid, he asked for exactly what you're thinking. He showed her a paper and said he wanted all the medicines listed there. Slightly excited, she asks if he really just wants that. He says yes, unless she's looking to offer something more. She says obviously not, and she's going to collect everything now. The 2 guys were mechanics, and he quickly gives them a list of things he wants them to produce by 6 a.m. tomorrow. He hands over the items they'll need and tells them that what they'll receive in food will depend on what they produce. Obviously, he needed to be cautious, so he activates the watchful eye. The guy's inventory was packed with items. He still had 22 days worth of experience to reach level 6. He had 24 hours left to complete the mission, so he decided to rest a little. With that, night fell. The next day, he calmly woke up. The others obviously hadn't slept at all, spending the entire night producing what he had asked for. Our boy praised everyone, saying they had done a great job. The doctor patted the nurse on the shoulder, who looked almost dead from exhaustion. He handed a card to each of them, saying that now they wouldn't need to fight. Yexu was thrilled. She thought that when they finished, he was going to kill everyone, so she already had an escape plan. Apparently, he wasn't as cruel as she had imagined. "Sorry to tell you, girl, but he's actually worse than you think." She then asked how to use the card, and he realized that no one really knew what to do in this world yet. He decided to help her a bit more as a favor for everything she did in the past life. He showed her the system and how there's an option to use the card to make everything appear. She saw that and got all excited. With that, everyone activated their cards and began to feast. Seeing how lost she still was, he decided to give some tips, just in case she might be useful in the future. He told everyone to flee from the place after noon. That's because by then he would have killed all the zombies. He reminded them not to forget the time. Yahello told him to be careful since there were a lot of zombies outside. However, he said she should worry a little more about herself. When he stepped outside, indeed, it was full of zombies, and there was a horde nearby. But after a whole night of rest, he was ready. He struck the first zombie, and it dropped a fishing rod. He didn't let the body hit the ground, trying to attract as few zombies as possible. And with that, he started cleaning up the corridor. It didn't take long before he was heading toward the door. He opened the list and wondered how the zombies were pulling this off while being dead. The poor zombie was just chilling in the bathroom. But as soon as our boy approached, it turned and started running. However, with its pants down, it fell to the ground like an idiot. Lindsay finished off another one. He had to be careful because in the gym, people had more trained bodies, so it was common for them to also be stronger. He then saw the women's restroom. He approached cautiously, worried there might be someone alive in there. Then he snapped back to reality, thinking it's the apocalypse and it didn't matter if he liked the women's restroom or not anymore. He slowly started entering. He didn't find anyone at first and began checking each stall, until in one he heard the sound of two creatures. When he opened it, he saw that the romance had continued even after death. It was a shame, but he had to end that connection. They sensed the attack but easily missed. There was a bottle on the ground and once again, they tripped over it. With that, he finished off another two. This guy isn't quite right in the head. He even started taking pictures of the couple. He strangely seemed to recognize them. It seems that in the past life, they always hunted together and had a kind of synergy that made them unbeatable. But it was a shame that this time they died on the third day without accomplishing anything. As always, it was time to check the loot box. It was a fusion card that allowed him to combine two items to create a new one, possibly even upgrading to silver rank. He then looked back and saw a strange light coming from one of the stalls. He approached it and saw a chest floating above a pentagram. That was the wild chest, and he would need to stay there for 30 seconds to open it. He waited for a bit, and a green apple appeared. He started praying that it would be some kind of strength or agility item. He checked the description, and the item increased his physique stat by 2 attribute points, which was basically health. He would have preferred agility, but at least it wasn't that bad. He washed the apple and ate it right away, excited that in this life he's eating much better than in the past. He left the restroom thinking that this place was giving him a lot of good stuff. Outside, he encountered another crowd. Man, this time he really saw the whole crowd. He moved to a corner to avoid attracting all the zombies at once. As soon as 2 of them approached, he whipped them in the neck. 2 more came and they went down too. Man, this kid is making it rain with these creatures. He's spending all the resources he gets on strength. Inside a box, he found a lion bracelet. It gave a 10% chance to intimidate a person for 1 second, causing their movements to freeze. The system then showed all the equipment slots and explained what could go into each one. He immediately equipped the lion bracelet. Slowly, he resumed walking through the gym, casually sipping a juice. That's when he opened a room full of zombies or maybe dead doctors. I'm not sure. He comes to the conclusion that based on the injuries and the way the disaster was caused, it could only have been a zombie boss. A type of creature much stronger than others of the same level, and one that usually feeds on humans. In the absence of humans, even feeds on other zombies. The stronger the creature, the easier it is for it to become a zombie. That's why out of 1 trillion mosquitoes, only 1 turns into a zombie. And usually, mutated animals also hunt zombies. Then he notices something. Based on the numerous cuts on the body, it seemed like a zombie cat had done this. This was always one of the types he hated most since they had extremely sharp senses. If that creature was around, it probably already knew about him, so maybe he'd walked into a trap. He focuses, trying to notice if something's approaching. That's when something seems to alert him. The second he opens his eyes, he almost gets grabbed by the cat. He barely dodges and throws his boomerang sword. Not only was that a mutant creature, but it was also a boss. The creature had incredible agility and could create false images, reducing damage by 50%. It also had talents for a sharp attack and heightened vision. The list of attributes for this thing was long, and Lindsay knew this meant it would also give a good reward. Even though it was a difficult creature, he still had 10 years of experience fighting things like this. The hack system detected the zombie cat and gave him the mission to kill it. The mission was called the Ungrateful Zombie Kitty. That's because the gym used to rescue several cats from the city, but after the apocalypse started and one of them turned, it went on a killing spree. The mission would give him the same amount of experience as killing 100 level 1 zombies. Man, the true system kicked in, and then the hack system reactivated the mission, boosting the reward. Now instead of earning 100 XP, he would get 300, and he had 24 hours to complete it. He started finding it strange that this system was being so generous. He remembered that in the past life, the system was full of tricks. It always promised things would be easy, but when he got there, it was an invincible creature. At first, a 1% item drop chance didn't seem so unfair, but when the people started forming groups, everyone realized the rewards weren't enough. However, he, on the other hand, was getting extremely good missions compared to normal. Obviously, he accepted it. He had 24 hours to kill this ungrateful cat, which was calmly licking its paw. He knew this animal was a counterattack specialist, so he couldn't just charge in. So he sat down, pulled out his phone, and started reading a manhwa. When he laughed, the cat lost its temper, stood up, and jumped at him. At the same moment, Lindsay also stood up and jumped back, dodging the attack. He transformed his phone into a katana, and the cat retreated. But then it came at him again. Once again, he dodged and found an opening to strike its back. But the cat smiled, saying that although he was clever, he never imagined it already knew his moves. It dodged again, but our boy found a chance to cut its claws. Immediately, the cat said it wouldn't forgive him for hurting it like that. But our boy just said that without claws, it couldn't win. Suddenly, the cat activated an eye ability. Our boy knew that would pull him into an illusion. He found himself in another world with a giant cat full of limbs on its face. But for him, who had lived 10 years in an apocalypse, this was nothing. The cat was confused that the boy wasn't scared. Our boy slashed its eye, breaking the illusion. At that moment, the creature tried to flee. But of course, he wasn't going to let it escape. He threw his boomerang sword, whipping it in the neck, and the boss was killed. Immediately, he completed the mission, gained a ton of experience, leveled up, and even earned an achievement. Everyone in the city was trying to figure out who this guy was, receiving announcements all the time. The author thinks it's cool to have a girl saying she wants to marry him, even though she doesn't know who this crazy guy is. Another person says they prefer to stay anonymous. Meanwhile, someone drinking wine knows that the name means he's probably from Dragon City, and having an expert like him in their group would drastically increase their survival chances. All this commotion was because everyone found out he killed that beast. He knew that the more attention he attracted, the more he would have to hide. Suddenly, he pulled up a chair and sat down. Obviously, the lazy guy needed to rest a bit after the fight. He was impressed he managed to win without getting too injured, but you have to be more careful. For killing the first boss, he earned 1,000 prestige points and 1,000 gold. At that moment, he had a total of 2,000 prestige, 5,000 gold, and 4 attribute points to spend. The Bronze Lament title gave him +2 in all attributes, and reduced the resistance of all other creatures by 5%. However, to equip that, he'd have to give up the first kill title. Since it gave more attributes, he ended up switching and wondered how strong he would be when he changed professions. Half an hour passed. The boy was so lazy that he rested before going to claim the chest. Inside it, he found a zombie kitty horn. When blown, it allowed him to summon a zombie cat to help him for 30 minutes every 48 hours. The good part was that the cat would have 60% of his protagonist's strength, and everything it killed would count for him. The only downside was that the kitty wouldn't have the 100% drop rate. But for him, who was walking around alone, having a companion to distract the creatures would be perfect. Of course, he knew that the claws, eyes, skin, and everything else from that cat could be used to make good items. So he tossed the carcass into his inventory. A while later, he headed to the warehouse because he remembered that's where the silver chest was. However, when he opened it, he was horrified. It was full of skulls and some eyes scattered on the floor. It seemed like the zombie cat was the one who had done all that. Only in the apocalypse could there be a creature that collected everyone's eyes. He knew that this little thing liked to hoard, so he started looking around to see if he could find more treasure. He spotted a dumbbell stuck on a treadmill and wondered if that was the cat's toy. Besides that amazing innovation, there wasn't much else in the room. The only thing left to check was what was under that white sheet. And to no one's surprise, there was the silver chest that should have been in that room anyway. He gained 20 prestige points for finding it, but it would take 60 seconds to open. I don't know why they put a timer on it when they always managed to open it on time. Inside, he found a white cloak and a skill book. The book granted him the double slash ability, which caused an explosion dealing 70% of his attributes. The tricky part was that you needed to land both hits, but he was confident in that. Immediately, he learned the skill, and out of the 5 skills he could equip, he now had 2. He also received the white winged cloak, which allowed him to glide once every 20 minutes. Look at his inventory, already getting fully equipped. However, the design of this thing is awful. It looks like a half-plucked chicken. He said the plan was just to kill Lai Hao and leave the rest of the family alone. But why do that when he could send everyone to hell? Yeah, my friend, this boy isn't exactly a good guy. Now the only thing left in that place was to complete the mission of killing 100 creatures. He entered a room and closed the door. He knocked on the wood and all the zombies turned toward him. He activated the chicken cloak effect, saying he was eager to test it out. He jumped in front of the zombies and the boy took off. He swooped down like Michael Phelps in a dive, landing a hit on their heads. He gained momentum, gliding to the other side while looking stylish. Man, this gliding is more like flying. He's just hanging there in the air. Then he said it was time to test out the new ability. He pointed at the zombie and unleashed a slash in its direction. 2 zombies were instantly taken down. And man, that ability really caused an explosion. Even he was surprised by the mess he made. His endless glide finally ended, and he had to land to avoid being thrown far. He was impressed that the zombie resisted much more than he expected. This ability had the same speed as the boomerang, but it was way more destructive. Now that he finished his experiments, it was time to start taking things seriously. We saw a bunch of notifications of him receiving gold. He kept clearing the entire gym, farming the whole place. In no time, there were piles of zombie corpses. But he started to realize his luck was running out, as the poor guy was only receiving resources. He was so lazy that he decided to pick up the boxes after everything was done. Even to receive the system's rewards, he sat down in a chair. He was going to receive a hack and new equipment. He asked for the equipment first to save the best for last. The system started announcing that a bronze-ranked item was being created. What he got was a blood absorption ring, which turned 5% of the damage he dealt into life restored to him. He quickly realized that now, against low-level creatures, he'd be practically immortal. Man, pretty soon, this boy's going to be an e-boy with all the rings he's equipping. Funny thing, though, is you can't see any rings on his fingers. He's just wearing that ridiculous chicken cloak. He then told the system it was time to get the hack, and he wanted to see something good. Of course, it would be the famous hook, but we'll only find out in the next chapter. He was shocked to see the perfect hack for him. It was basically an auto-collect hack that picked up everything the creatures dropped. He already knew that from now on, all he had to do was kill, and everything would come to him. For a lazy psychopath, this was perfect. He was worried that people would see him killing creatures and notice that he always collected a bunch of boxes. That's when he asked the system what the deal was with his hack being at level 1. The system explained that if he got the same talent in the future, the level would increase. However, he was more excited to get something different next time. He looked at the pile of dead zombies and decided to do a test. As he walked among the bodies, all the cards automatically went to him. And the hack was so good, they even organized his inventory for him. Now it was perfect for anyone with ADHD. All nice and tidy side by side. That's when he realized he'd been in this place for too long. He needed to head to the Lee family's village and start his revenge. The scene shifted to the Lai mansion. Lai Ho was lounging on the couch happy as can be while everyone else was suffering in the apocalypse. But suddenly, he glanced at the clock. He got up and slapped the first person he saw, demanding to know where those 2 idiots had gone and why they hadn't arrived yet. The butler explained that the 2 guards being sent to him had encountered a horde of creatures at the university and would be delayed. Lai Ho was furious with those damn zombies for ruining all of his plans, even more considering that he killed one of those zombies and didn't get any experience. What he did was ask the bodyguards to leave some zombies almost dead, just so he could deliver the final blow, but he wasn't sure why he received so little XP. That's when they heard a sound nearby. Someone had arrived at the door. Props to the forgetful artist who suddenly changed the kid's hair from blue to blonde after 30 chapters. He asked Rong, standing in front of him, if she had found the damn girl and that orphan. Rong replied that they found the girl, but the boy had already disappeared. The blonde told him to bring her in because he wanted to scold her for hiding. But Rong threw the suitcase on the ground and said she was already dead, and that she was inside. The blonde's face changed instantly, looking horrified. Rong explained that they found her body in the warehouse behind the school, and next to it was a man's bloody clothing. He also noted that she seemed to have been tortured in all the most painful places before she died. Rong was about to explain more details, but Lai Hao ran off asking for a bucket. At that point, Rong said that whoever did this probably hated the girl a lot, and he added that whoever did this might come after Lai Hao as well. Lai Hao dismissed the idea, saying it must have happened because she was the prettiest girl on campus. Then he remembered that the person who probably hated her the most for everything she did was Lin Zhe. But it was impossible that Lin Zhe was that strong, being an orphan without anyone's support. They still hadn't revealed the big surprise, so there was no way Lin Zhe could know she had been betraying him. Rong asked if this Lin Zhe was the son of Lin Jian. Lai Ho said yes, and Rong replied that whether strong or not, Lin Zhe had someone extremely skilled helping him. Maybe the 100 bodyguards they brought wouldn't be enough. Lai Hao asked how that was possible if Rong was one of the top 10 strongest in Dragon City. He ordered Rong to either go back to training or bring more bodyguards, do whatever it took to make sure he didn't die. Rong reassured him not to worry, that he would risk his life to protect him. Man, Rong said he's willing to die for this kid. Clearly, he's not too fond of living. Meanwhile, in the forest, zombies were falling one after another. Our boy had already reached level 8. He was impressed by how quickly he was leveling up without even entering a dungeon. And now he was standing face to face with Lai Hao's mansion, eager to settle the score with the bastard. At the mansion, troops were patrolling everywhere. Our boy was expertly hidden up in a tree. He climbed down, crossed the lawn, and pressed his secret lever. With that, a passage that few knew about opened up. Even with so many guards in this place, they didn't stand a chance against someone who knew everything. As he got closer to the house, he observed in hiding. He quickly recognized the group as part of the mercenary guild. In his past life, this was the group Lai Hao trusted most and the one he hated the most. It's a shame that he had been watching this family for a long time. So far, the troops seemed well organized and he hadn't found any weaknesses. But then something caught his attention. He recognized that man as the infamous Rong Zhang. In his past life, this guy became a war god and was always the leader of the mercenaries. Eventually, Lai Hao ordered this guy to hunt him down. Many times, he found himself surrounded. Rong was definitely one of the worst enemies he faced. However, he had escaped Rong so many times that the guy even earned the title of the Disgraced. It was probably fate that they met again like this. At that moment, Rong sensed something. He turned around and our boy barely managed to hide. It was dangerous, but it would be perfect if someone so crucial to this family died early on. He put on the mask that hid his presence, and at that very moment, the guards passed right by him. I knew that thing helped hide his presence, but damn, the guy was standing right there, and nobody saw him. Our boy was anxious not to miss this opportunity, but Rong remained alert, wondering why he had this feeling that someone was watching him. He told the others to increase security around the place, thinking he needed to kill whoever was nearby. Time passed, and it was already midnight. On the sofa in the living room, Lai Ho said it was ridiculous to think someone was out there. He was sure there were only zombies outside, but Rong said it was better to be cautious because he was certain they were being targeted. Lai Ho threw his watch on the floor, calling the guy a bastard for taking so long to come and kill him, making him lose sleep. One of the servants said that if he was so bored, they could find something for him to do. The excited one said she had an idea and asked Rong if he hadn't captured a zombie today. Rong confirmed that he had, bringing it in for analysis, thinking it might be useful in developing new weapons to fight zombies. Lai Ho said there were plenty of zombies outside and he wanted to play with this one. Rong knew it would be dangerous, but figured it might be a good way to calm the boy down a bit. Lai Ho said he wasn't going to take any risks in this game, and besides, there were plenty of people in the village. Rong looked at the man next to him and told him to bring the zombie they had captured. A while later, a muscular zombie was brought in, restrained by chains, with several men struggling to hold it down. Clearly, this creature wasn't at a normal level. Lai Hao, however, didn't hesitate and ordered them to bring the large cage. Inside were 6 girls, all staring at each other, trying to figure out what was about to happen. As soon as he rang the bell, all of them flinched in fear. The girls were going wild, banging on the bars of the cage. It was clear that Lai Hao also had some mental issues. It seemed like this was an apocalypse for people with an IQ of 16. With that, he handed the key to one of the men, telling him to open the cage because he wanted to play a little game. The men entered and brought the zombie in. Lai Hao told them to place it at the entrance, remove the chains, and throw it inside the cell. Suddenly, a man knelt down behind him, begging him not to do it because it was too cruel. Another man in a suit apologized for the kneeling man, explaining that he was new to the place. Lai Hao approached the man and asked if he was trying to give him orders. The man on the ground kept repeating, begging for the girls' lives. The other beside him quickly added that he would never dare to give orders to the young master. Lai Hao smiled, saying it was nice to see someone brave enough to challenge his authority. Since the man had the courage to stand up to him, it was time to test if he was as strong as he seemed. He then ordered a few men to suppress him. One of them stepped forward to punch the guy in the face, but the man easily blocked the first hit. Lai Hao watched with interest, finding this situation amusing. Still on his knees, the man twisted the attacker's arm, causing him to wince in pain. The old man was impressed that this kneeling guy was stronger than the bully, but of course, now he wanted to end the man's life for embarrassing him. He called 2 more men over to help him. The younger ones wondered why he was wasting time on this boy who had lost his abilities. Punches flew back and forth, and finally the poor guy was immobilized. Now he was taking a beating, with punches landing squarely on his face. The guy turned into a punching bag. However, Lai Hao ordered them not to kill him. Since he wanted to protect these girls, it would be perfect for him to watch them all die. The poor girls stood there, frozen, not doing anything, and the men started releasing the zombie. Man, they were really going to throw the beast in there. What a cruel world. The zombie wasted no time and was on the first girl's neck in seconds. The poor guy outside was just crying. He seemed to have lost the will to live. Lai Hao mocked him, saying that if he was so strong, he should go in and save the girls. The other soldiers chimed in, agreeing it was a brilliant idea. But even they were thinking this had gone too far, and that even in an apocalypse, they shouldn't treat lives like this. They dragged the boy's body away, while the zombie tore through everything inside the cage. When it was finished, they threw the boy inside. At that moment, the zombie turned toward him, rushing in his direction. The boy stopped and apologized to his mother, saying that today he wouldn't be able to protect her or himself. But then, out of nowhere, he got motivated, saying he wasn't going to die because she was waiting for him at home. The boy stood up and landed a punch on the zombie's jaw. He grabbed it in a bear hug and dragged the zombie across the cage. He slammed its back against the bars, but it wasn't going to be that easy. The zombie countered with a crushing hold. Meanwhile, Lai Ho was watching, commenting that this was the best entertainment he'd seen. Even though the boy was beaten, he got up and delivered another blow to the zombie's face. After a lot of fighting, he dropped to his knees. The zombie was beside him, but his body had no strength left. He apologized, saying he should have listened to her. Meanwhile, Rong observed, commenting that it was a shame the boy had died. 1 second, the guards pitied him. The next, they complained he had died too quickly. But if he died quickly, he was about to come back. At that moment, he woke up as a zombie. Outside, Lindsay saw that his chance had finally come. As soon as he spotted someone who looked like him, he finished him off. He put on the clothes and headed for the door. People asked why Joe was there. He simply said he saw someone sleeping and came to remind him to get back to work. 2 men approached from behind. One of them commented that they had been patrolling for over a day without sleep, and our boy remarked that they were being treated like cannon fodder. Then the round-headed guy asked if Jia didn't seem a little taller than usual. A second later, Lindsay knocked them both out, leaving them kissing the pavement. Calmly, he walked through the mansion. No one there had a high enough level to stand a chance against him. However, one of them managed to fire a flare into the air, but our boy threw a knife, intercepting it mid-flight. It was a shame for these guys, but he knew exactly how they operated. The system announced that the security had been defeated and that the path of revenge had begun. The mission was titled Jia's Revenge, and no one could leave alive after provoking the user. He had to kill all 269 people inside that village. He would receive another normal level hack and a bronze equipment item. Our boy immediately accepted, saying that now he had even more reason to kill Lai Hao. The mission then appeared, stating that a revenge barrier had been activated. Basically, if anyone left this place, he would be able to track them for an entire month. He got excited because this meant no one would escape, no matter where they went. However, the moment he accepted the mission, multiple kills started appearing on his screen. He needed to hurry and figure out what was happening inside the mansion. These guys seemed to forget that there was no one else around because they had killed all the women there for God's sake. That's when a voice echoed, asking why they weren't playing with him instead. The voice continued, leaving everyone standing up confused. The guy with red hair already knew that whoever was speaking had a much stronger aura than his own. Lai Hao immediately panicked, realizing that whoever this was had come to kill him. Oh boy, now Lai Hao's hair had turned back to blue and Rong's had suddenly turned red. Looks like we'll need to start a fundraiser to get the poor artist some Alzheimer's medication. Red-haired Rong stood in the middle of the room with his friends and called for the person to show themselves. He was confused, wanting to know who this person was that had been killing everyone so easily. The voice said that he was human, but was going to become the reaper of all the souls in that room. The men were terrified, but Rong told them to calm down. They split up, each watching a different position. That's when the legendary flashbang dropped in the middle of the room. It exploded and no one could see anything. Meanwhile, our boy calmly walked in, hands in his pockets like it was a runway. As soon as he entered, he activated his spike attack. Half the army started getting impaled. The boomerang slash took out 2 more. Rong had no idea who was standing in front of them. When he looked to the side, there was another grenade. An explosion followed and our boy walked on unfazed. With the smoke cleared, Rong still hadn't figured out what was happening. But all of his allies were already gone. One of the men said it must be some kind of witch because he saw a spinning sword killing everyone. Rong asked how many people were still in the area, and the man said at least 66 brothers with a few others injured. Meanwhile, Lai Hao was furious, telling Rong to hurry up and get revenge by killing the person who ruined his plans. Rong ordered them to start hunting this guy because he was sure there was no way he could kill nearly 100 people on his own. He then turned to the servant and told him to take the master to the hideout. The servant knew, however, that this person was probably watching everything. Our boy was slowly killing everyone, enjoying watching their despair. As he expected, the men were trying to form a group to escape. He opened the system and checked, discovering that Rong was already level 5. He heard a bunch of people shouting for the coward to show himself and thought it was stupid for them to keep repeating that. He decided to summon the kitty to give them a little more entertainment. At that moment, the cat appeared beside him. He pulled out a knife and threw it toward the room, cutting a candle holder, which crashed to the floor and scattered glass everywhere. But before the men could understand what was happening, the cat was already on the first one's neck. Our boy used the distraction to enter the room and start eliminating more of them. Another area was clear and he withdrew once again. Rong spotted him, but quickly realized he couldn't see his name or level. He shouted, asking who he was and what he wanted to do. Our boy observed Rong, feeling disappointed. This guy didn't even resemble the war god he once was. He then told them he was there to teach them the meaning of despair. In a second, he passed through 3 men and was face to face with Rong. The poor guy couldn't react and trembled all over. He dropped to his knees, realizing he didn't stand a chance. The kid went after him, and our boy said he was going after Lai Hao. Because with the revenge barrier, there was no way that guy could hide. He kicked Rong, asking how he expected to be called the leader of the mercenaries while acting like this. But Rong replied that the whole organization had been wiped out, so it wasn't like he was the leader of anything anymore. Lindsay smiled, seeing that Rong had realized he had lost everything he had worked so hard for over the past years. Rong then asked him to at least tell him who he was so he wouldn't die with that regret. Our boy said he didn't expect something so good to happen, and slowly approached him. Then he whipped his neck, taking him down. Rong hit the floor and our boy stepped on his head, saying he remembered the day Rong did the same to him and called him an ant. He stomped on him several times, saying that Rong had taught him never to talk too much in front of an enemy and to always finish them off. It was much better watching him die full of regrets. Now that Rong was dead, the Li family had been drastically weakened. But it seemed our boy had gotten drunk on revenge, stumbling into things left and right. With that, he left the mansion, leaving a pile of people ready for the next life. Elsewhere, a desperate Lai Hao said it was impossible that this guy would follow him there. The butler told him not to worry, assuring him that Rong would handle the situation. But then suddenly, the door dented in the shape of a body. At that moment, Lai Hao knows that the person he suspects are protagonists sent to kill him has arrived. The butler tells him to calm down, that he sent the rest of the people to the secret base, so no one will imagine they are there. Lai Hao is furious, wondering how that damn orphan found such a strong assassin. The butler asks if it could be a secret card that his father, Lin Jian, had left behind. However, Lai Hao insists that it's impossible. After they killed his father, they left nothing for that boy. If it weren't for the boss's insistence, they wouldn't even have left a descendant. Our boy drags the man away from the metal door and announces for everyone to hear that he now understands everything. Inside, Lai Hao asks why he's hearing Lindsay's voice, and our boy says that, apparently, he's been a target since birth. There were still many things he didn't know. From inside, Lai Hao yells that he should have killed that brat when he had the chance. However, our boy wants to know who Lin Jian was and why they wanted to wipe out the entire Lin family. Lai Hao laughs, saying it seems that the orphan really knows nothing about his father. Then Lai Hao confesses that his father was about to get promoted when Lin Jian, our boy's father, reported him. This ruined all the Li family's plans and business, which is why they made sure the entire Lin family was killed. At that point, Lai Hao says it's time for our boy to answer and asks where he found this professional assassin. But our boy replies that it's useless for him to know, as the entire Li family will disappear. Lai Hao laughs, telling him to keep dreaming, until our boy kicks the doorknob. With that, the door opens, revealing the little kitten next to him. Man, the poor butler comes rushing to punch him. Even lazily, our boy dodges. The kitten leaps in his direction, and what do you know, bam. The butler punches the little guy. The 30 minutes of the kitten were up, and he begins to disintegrate. At that moment, our boy moves to his face, removes his mask, and says Lindsay has arrived. The old man is startled, asking if he was the assassin behind all of this. And at that moment, Lai Hao realizes he messed up. The butler says it's impossible that a kid like him could have killed someone as trained as wrong. Our boy warns the butler that the Li family's martial arts have become irrelevant in the apocalypse. Lai Hao keeps protesting, saying it's impossible for him to have gotten this strong alone. Our boy tells him that now he's going to find out if he's strong enough to take them both down. Then he lunges at the butler. He brings both arms together and blocks the punch. Man, he's still holding up, what a guy. Our boy is impressed, saying that not even Wrong could have withstood a punch like that. That's when the old man decides to show his true form. He destroys all his clothes, becoming ridiculously muscular. Our boy draws his sword and slashes at him. The butler calls him despicable for fighting dirty, but he simply responds that in an apocalypse, anything goes. In that moment, he spins the sword and activates a double slash. The butler dodges it, but it's a boomerang, and it's coming back from behind. With that, the butler takes the first hit on his arm. The old man says he can't believe that after 50 years of training, he's going to lose this easily. That's when our boy's explosive combo activates on the butler's arm. At the same time, Lindsay moves in closer. And then bam, he stamps the butler's chin, saying he needs to make sure he's dead. It's a shame that he was so strong, but he couldn't adapt to the apocalypse. This shows that it's necessary to be smart and always stay alert to the situation and its changes. That's when he sees that Lai Hao has fainted on the floor. He thinks Lai Hao is useless and approaches him with his sword. He gives him a little poke to see if the boy wakes up. Of course, in an instant, he jumps up screaming. Our boy asks if he's going to stop pretending to be dead. Man, he gives him a sequence that's not exactly kind. Lai Hao starts screaming for help, saying his father won't let this slide. But our boy just keeps spinning the sword. Lai Hao begins to beg him to finish him off quickly. Lindsay tells him not to worry, he won't forget to do that. He then pulls out a blunt knife that can't cut properly and gives the first strike to Lai Hao's thighs. Our boy apologizes, saying that unfortunately this apocalypse is full of bad weapons. But sooner or later he would get it right, he promised. And then he strikes again. Our boy says it's a shame Lai Hao will never feel even 1% of what he suffered for 10 years. Confused, Lai Hao asks what he means by 10 years, considering he only started messing with our boy 3 years ago and thinking about ending him. Our boy tells him to stop with the stories, because it's time for some fun. He gives him a lash here, then another one there. For each strike, he gives a reason or a feeling he had experienced over the past 10 years. One on the chest for killing the family he never even got to know. Then he says he's tired of giving reasons, and from now on, it's just because it makes him happy. He goes into his inventory and pulls out a very peculiar item, and it's unclear what he plans to do with it. Lai Hao asks what he's planning. Our boy says that it was Lai Hao himself who came up with this method. Shocked, Lai Hao says he's thought of something like that, but never told anyone. Lindsay keeps making him suffer for a long time. A few hours pass, and Lai Hao is completely messed up. Our boy says he can't die that easily, that it's not even 1% of what he used to do to others. However, looking at the situation, our boy no longer has any interest in killing someone so weak. Still, he gives him a few pokes to see if he's pretending, until Lai Hao's body collapses and he says that now he's finally reached his limit. Our boy walks away and activates the double explosion slash. The kid even had to leave the room to grab an umbrella. Outside, the full moon is high in the sky, and our boy says the Li family's life wasn't so bad after all. At that moment, the system alerts him that he's activated the Vengeful Heart talent. Saying it was easy, he says, was the hardest thing so far, you bastard. The system explains that skills are learned through books, but talents can only be activated when a person goes through certain experiences. The Vengeful Heart talent makes him stronger, and the more he hates the person he's facing, the stronger he becomes. Our boy is impressed, noting that it increases his strength by 20%, and it's only a level 1 talent, so maybe it can grow even more. For eliminating the entire Lee family, he'll receive a new hack and a bronze-level piece of equipment. He opens the chest, curious to see what he gets, and in the cutest way, he receives a magical girl's wand. The problem is that it's an item exclusive to the magic class, so you already know that soon some girl will show up for our boy to help. He says it's useless to him, so for now, he just stores it in his inventory and will try to sell it later. Looking at his list, this auto-loot hack proves to be very useful. The truth is that in the apocalypse, when you kill someone, their inventory disappears and you can only steal what's equipped. That's why in the future, it was better to enslave people rather than kill them, since you could collect far more items over time. One of the items he stole in all this chaos was a purification necklace. It adds one more stat and can remove a negative status every 12 hours. It's weaker than the meditation one, but it will be more crucial in a fight, so he decides to equip it. Now it's time for what really matters. He tells the system to reveal the new hack he'll receive. Man, even a loading bar appears. The ability he receives is absolute enslavement. It allows him to turn a zombie into a slave that will do anything to protect his life. In the 10 years of his previous life, Lindsay doesn't even remember seeing anyone with such power. He pinches his own face, saying he really must be dreaming. Moreover, it seems like he gets an idea upon realizing the zombie can be completely loyal. That means he won't have to do so much dirty work anymore. He was looking forward to living a solitary life, but since he can have someone nearby who will obey everything and die for him, there's no reason to refuse. Not to mention, it's hard to imagine how strong this talent would become if it levels up. The system explains that the more zombies he enslaves, the more he can control. Our boy already imagines himself with an army invading the city. However, he knows this isn't realistic for now. The best idea is to find one of the zombies that will become the zombie king in the future, as those have potential. The problem is not knowing if they'll have the same opportunity by becoming his slave. But for now, it's time to check out the Lee family vault because he knows the Lee family is famous for its treasures. The problem is that when he enters, it's full of millionaire things that have no value in this world anymore. Strangely, he decides to spend the money on the paintings because he knows they'll be of some use. After taking what he thinks is useful and destroying the rest, he leaves, singing. It was nighttime and the zombies would be more dangerous, so there was no reason not to spend some time in the luxurious villa. However, what he doesn't know is that in the room he's entering, there's a zombie standing in the middle. What's strange is that, in theory, he killed all the people in that village, but then he finds that poor zombie that died in total suffering. The zombie's attributes were enhanced because it was nighttime, but it had an epic rank talent that would increase its power as it leveled up. Our boy, seeing the stats, already knows it's a good target to use the new enslavement talent. What's strange is that the creature is just standing there doing nothing. Lindsay even finds it odd and tells the guy that he's a zombie, asking if he's not going to bite him. But seeing that the zombie has a mind stat of 3, he assumes the guy must have been pretty dumb as a human or something. He asks the system if he can really enslave that zombie since it has a lot of stats. The system says yes, as it still has fewer stats than our boy. Wow, he gets thoughtful. That mind level is very low, but with no choice and wanting to get stronger quickly, he tells the system that he wants to enslave that monster. The screen pops up and he clicks yes. Suddenly, a red energy begins to surround the creature. However, he notices that the zombie seems to be resisting somehow. He's startled, and out of nowhere, he sees the zombie calmly scratching its head. Then a window appears, asking him to give the creature a name. Man, what cruel guy. Since it's tall and strong, he names it Big Idiot. The system congratulates him for successfully enslaving Big Idiot. Another attribute window appears for Big Idiot, and man, it has everything a person has. However, the system warns that he can't gain prestige or use an inventory. Our boy then tells Big Idiot to show his strength, since he imagines that the cage can't hold him. At that moment, Big Idiot grabs the iron bars and begins to create an opening. In a second, he's outside and man running toward Lindsay. But out of nowhere, he stops, and apparently, he was just playing around, leaving our boy looking like a fool. Instantly, our boy starts equipping some leftover items. What's strange is that now the system message says that the zombie no longer has my attributes. Our boy says it's to be expected since the creature was already too strong. He then tells Big Idiot that he's going to sleep and orders him to watch the door. Another peaceful night for the lazy one passes and he wakes up in his room. Upon opening the door, Big Idiot is standing there, just watching. Our boy congratulates him, saying he did a great job, but then asks if he wasn't down there eating the bodies. The creature says no, and our boy realizes it's quite different. With that, he heads to another room and pulls out the usual feast. He starts eating, but then something falls on his back. When he looks, it's Big Idiot drooling, wanting to eat. Our boy has infinite food, so he tells him to eat a bit too. In his past life, he doesn't remember zombies liking to eat human food, but he had no choice, so he summoned another feast and told him to sit down. He was starting to worry about storing so many food cards, but it seems he found the solution. The original plan was to get revenge at level 5 or 6, but now he's already at level 8 and still can't enter the dungeons. Maybe with the map, the equipment, and Big Idiot's help, he could make the profession change and become a shadow of illusion. If that's the case, it's time to head to the Mada Museum and find the profession change scroll. He remembers that the ancestral scrolls there are essential for a profession change. When you enter the class change space, you have to complete 3 challenges within the time limit or you die. He remembers that in his past life when he was going to get that item, it was the day he received some videos of Yo Jing doing adult stuff with Lai Hao. He talked to his friends who came up with a plan to get revenge on Lai Hao, while our boy didn't know that they had been bought off. He was tricked and thrown into a profession change space. Their plan was either to kill him or make him die without anyone knowing. But what they didn't expect was that he ended up winning that space, acquiring a profession and living with a scar on his face for 10 years. That happened on the 8th day of the apocalypse, and since they were still in a room, there shouldn't be anyone at the Mada Museum yet. Now without Lai Hao in this world, he knows things will go much more smoothly this time. Our boy is impressed by how natural his zombie seems, and it looks like he's got a brilliant idea. Outside, he's already fully equipped. He made Big Idiot look quite human to avoid attracting attention. The scene shifts to the Mada Museum, a bunch of creatures heading their way. Seeing that there are several dead zombies, our boy knows there must be someone else in this place, so he'll have to be cautious. Obviously, with a 100% drop rate, he's got to be the one to kill. Man, the place is blessed. He kills 3 creatures and already picks up a scroll. That scroll would allow him to summon a fireball, which he could use to cause a bit of damage. He doesn't think that's bad at all. When he looks back, there are some zombies interacting with Big Idiot. He hides, changing his plan. Since Big Idiot doesn't become a target for anyone, he could just let him wander around, opening chests until he finds that strange person. This way, he can avoid any problems and wouldn't have to expose himself. The only issue with this place for now is that there's an absurd number of zombies and maybe even the 2 of them wouldn't be enough to handle everything. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, some guys are standing on a balcony saying that they need to go to the museum to get the scrolls. The problem is they don't have enough people to cover the entire place. Our boy is just observing, and he even reads their lips, knowing that if he could join this plan, it would save him a lot of trouble. The scene changes to a shopping mall. A man is giving a speech to everyone, saying that it has been decided. His name is Go Dong, and he says they're waiting to have 200 armed people before starting the mission. However, some step forward, saying they can't wait that long since they already have enough strength. Everyone is starting to get hungry, and they need to hunt zombies to get new items. Suddenly, one of the rebels gets slapped in the face. A red-haired woman tells him to shut up and stop trying to start a revolt. But the guy who got slapped tells Mingjing to stop acting arrogantly just because she has a bronze-level item. Strangely, he tells her that it's better to follow his plans and submit to him. She just asks if he really thinks he's worthy of her. The guy calls her stupid and says that sooner or later, he'll take her down and do whatever he wants with her. She tells him to find a mirror and take a good look at himself first to see if that's even possible. His friends just laugh at him, and he says they better not blame him in the future. While they're arguing, Gao Dong comes down and tells them to stop fighting and listen to him. That's when someone knocks on the door. It's our boy and Big Idiot. It seems like he recognizes someone when the door opens. It's the guy named Go Dong, and he remembers seeing him when he was activating the scrolls back then. At that moment, the girl asks who he is and why he's there. Our boy just calmly approaches. Go Dong asks for his name and why he came to the Reaper's Club, especially since looking at our boy, he can't see any information about him. And the strangest thing is that the other guy next to him is called Big Idiot, a level 4. Lindsay simply says that he saw a lot of people there and wanted to know if he could join them. Go Dong smiles, saying of course, and introduces himself as the club's president. Our boy shakes his hand and lies, saying his name is Lin Luo. He introduces Big Idiot, saying unfortunately he's mute and always works as a bodyguard. With that, our boy thinks to himself that Go Dong seems pretty dumb and easy to fool. He turns to Big Idiot and tells him that they're now part of the group. He didn't expect it to be so easy to infiltrate. In a room, Go Dong says that since they're new, he wants to know what they like to do. Lindsay says he enjoys killing zombies and getting stronger, which is why he wanted to join a larger group. Excited, Go Dong says that if that's the case, he has several skill books he can give him. Our boy feels a bit confused by how generous this guy is being. He says it's not necessary, but Go Dong insists, saying they're friends now. He places a book on the table, and our boy is impressed that it's actually something good. It's a Berserker skill book. It's a skill that makes you go berserk, but it increases your stats by 50% for 2 minutes. He knows that losing control like that for 2 minutes is no different from being a zombie in this world. Besides, a person is usually stronger when they can think clearly. Go Dong responds that he knows the side effects of this skill are pretty bad, but in a desperate situation, it could save your life. However, he's thinking to himself that he would never use something so risky, but it's different when you're giving it to others. Our boy closes the book and says he can feel Gao Dong's sincerity in giving him this item and genuinely thanks him. He asks if there's anything else because he and Big Idiot are eager to get back to killing creatures. However, Gao Dong seems to have recognized something in our boy's smile and asks him to wait a moment. Our boy asks what's up, and Gao Dong says he has one more gift. He has a card with a KFC meal on it and asks why they can't eat together. Even though Go Dong had already given him a skill, which wasn't the best, he didn't want our boy to hate him. Lindsay says it's fine. He and Big Idiot still need to kill a lot of zombies to level up. The guy thinks our boy hated him, but in reality he really liked the book and was even hesitant to take more. However, the guy grabs his hand and places the card in it, telling him he can take it for when he gets hungry. Not being able to reveal that he already has plenty of food, he simply thanks him. With that, he leaves and Gao Dong says that if he ever needs anything, he should just come talk to them. As our boy walks away, he thinks that Gao Dong isn't such a bad person since he liked that awful skill book. Little does he know how cruel our plucked chicken really is. Suddenly, a guy with a cigarette stops in front of him, warning him not to get too close to Gao Dong. If he continued like that, even if he was strong, before the guy could finish, Big Idiot yanked the guy's hand off his shoulder. Our boy just asked Big Idiot why he was taking so long. The guy laughs, asking if he really thinks he's strong just because he's big. But the zombie stomps on the ground and gives the fool his first beating. With that, one of them is already sent to the afterlife. Our boy then asks if anyone else has something to say. Obviously, the other guys drop their weapons and say, no, nothing. When they see their boss running, one of them says it's over now as another person has joined Gao Dong's side, especially considering that he just killed one of the competitors and sent that message. Of course, Gao Dong hears about it immediately. He's shocked that our boy killed someone as soon as he left the room. The red-haired guy says it's probably him because there was a guy next to him called Big Idiot. Gao Dong smiles, saying the boy did him a huge favor. Seeing that he killed Jia Tai, Gao Dong knows the boy wants to help him and thinks he'll be a valuable addition to the group. He orders them to bury Jia Tai and share his equipment with the rest of the group. Gao Dong walks away saying to himself, today's the perfect day. I thought our boy would be out hunting zombies, but instead he's sitting in a small room reading a book. Our boy asks the system if there's a chance Big Idiot could end up attacking him with that berserker mode. The system says no because Big Idiot's loyalty goes beyond consciousness. Our boy realizes this will be a great addition. He can control the actions of this guy, so even if he goes berserk, he can still direct him in some way. He hands the book to Big Idiot and tells him to learn it properly. Big Idiot responds by burping in his face. Our boy is standing by, watching, and finally sees that Big Idiot has learned it. This new ally has brought far more benefits than he expected. He stands up, saying it's time for them to go because there's a lot to collect at the Mado Museum. The scene shifts to him approaching and entering a room. At the back, there's a door labeled Game Store. He approaches, touches the doorknob, and the system welcomes him, wishing him a good experience. As he enters the room, a bunch of windows appear in front of him. There are windows for weapons, accessories, masks, and more. He has 6,000 coins and knows that normally 2,000 is enough to buy a good bronze rank piece of equipment. What he needs right now are pants, gloves, and a chest piece. However, as he's calmly making his purchases, a hand suddenly reaches out from one of the windows and moves toward him. He dodges just in time and realizes that he barely avoided it. He doesn't remember anything like this happening, so it seems there's a zombie trapped in the system. Suddenly, the creature starts emerging from the window. He finds it strange since he's been to this store countless times in his past life, and this never happened. She approaches and smacks him across the face. He then tells the system to collect, eager to see what would come from a bug-out zombie like this. When he opens the box, he finds a roll of toilet paper. It seems he spent 6,000 gold on who knows what because his money is gone, and he's standing there, devastated. The next moment, he appears in a warehouse full of resources. He grabs something and says he's going to check on what Big Idiot is doing outside. Big Idiot is out there taking care of everyone who comes near. Our boy starts walking around collecting various items. He also obtains a sword ring, and the system congratulates him for it, saying that the new item can be fused with his current sword. One of the items is a scarecrow that attracts nearby creatures. Another is a boxing glove that gives a 5% chance for his attacks to deal additional damage. And then there's a longsword that adds 3 more strength points. He equips the glove and the system asks if he wants to fuse the 2 swords. He knows that with a fusion function, you'd have to be really unlucky to come out worse off in the end. The problem is that his hack only affects item drops and nothing else. However, he decides to fuse them anyway because the creatures are getting stronger, and he needs new weapons. He confirms, and the 2 items begin to fuse. The system asks him to wait 30 minutes. While time passes, he has his usual feast. Unsurprisingly, he ends up with an even better weapon. It's a decapitation sword that increases his attack speed every time he finishes off an enemy. He comments on how lucky he is. Though, of course, no one is surprised, right? He calls Big Idiot, telling him it's time to head to the bookstore. He sends Big Idiot ahead to attract the creatures, while our boy sneaks up from behind, finishing them off with his spinning sword. With that, he advances to level 9, and now he needs 1,000 XP to reach level 10. He calls Big Idiot over and tells him that now they're going to clear the rooftop. Half an hour later, he gathers the creatures there and tells Big Idiot to activate Berserker mode. Immediately, the big guy starts roaring and his shirt explodes. Our boy tells him to charge and wipe out everything in sight. With that, poor Big Idiot charges alone while our boy sits back, sipping tea calmly. He watches, realizing that this Berserker mode is even stronger than he thought. Combining the creature's natural abilities with the Berserker mode essentially doubled his attributes. It's a perfect combination for a creature that relies solely on raw stats. After that, Big Idiot enters his cooldown period. The Berserker ability fades and he collapses to the ground exhausted. He enters a recovery state where he can eat 30% faster. Our boy pours a potion into his mouth and walks around while the auto-loot collects everything in the area. One of the items is a silver chest piece that creates a barrier around him when he's attacked, and another is a potion that helps recover energy for a few minutes. He then uses a scroll to strengthen the blood ring. The item levels up, giving him more strength, physical power, and the ability to absorb more energy. He continues in this rhythm, killing creatures, collecting items, and evolving. He checks his attributes and realizes that he's ready to move to another region. He approaches a door, opens it, and sees a completely destroyed room. He knew something like this could only be the work of a boss. He has no idea what the monster is because, in his previous life, it had already been killed. However, as he turns to the side, he comes face to face with the city's shopping mall. He opens the door and the system congratulates him, awarding him 10 prestige points. He's informed that he can't stay there for more than 30 minutes a day. With that, he receives a warm welcome for being the first person to enter and is told he'll get a 50% discount. He tells Big Idiot to keep an eye on things outside as usual, while he takes a look around. The store welcomes him and he decides to browse the products. The store gives several warnings about not fighting in that place, and he's lucky that Big Idiot is guarding the outside. He checks out the items, but the problem is that nothing there is good. He's collected way too much stuff and has over 100 of each item in stock. He decides to close the system since there's nothing useful for him. However, the store warns him that as he seems unsatisfied, the more expensive items will be shown. The system welcomes him as an honorable member of the city. The shop displays an honor crest, an order uniform, and a guardian's mark. He has 6,000 gold and decides to take advantage of the 50% discount for being the first person. The best option is the uniform, so he buys it on the spot. Since he's basically out of money, he tells the system that he's done. The uniform has an illusion ability that hides all of his other equipment as well as self-cleaning, temperature regulation, and other bodily functions. Additionally, anyone who attacks the wearer will have 10% of their attributes reduced for 5 minutes. Lastly, the uniform allows him to create reasonable missions that others can complete, except for him, of course. He equips everything, equips the uniform, and activates the illusion. The armor is now hidden under the uniform. The system then tells him to leave because he's been there for more than 30 minutes. Our boy grabs Big Idiot and leaves the room. Once outside, he tells Big Idiot to accept the mission of destroying everyone. Obviously, the system tells him that the mission doesn't make sense. He then tells Big Idiot to kill the legendary rank boss, but the system denies the mission as well. He turns and asks if it's possible to kill the boss of the bookstore. The mission is passed, and he accepts it immediately. It seems that Big Idiot is considered a player, so our boy can exploit this mission function. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, a couple is hiding in a room. The girl asks if they won't be found there, and the guy says no. However, right next to them, a red eye is watching them. The poor girl screams. The guy hugs her, telling her not to make any more noise. But man, there's a scary red demon, and I think they're done for. The guy gets licked in the face as he hugs her. With that, he runs, telling Xiaomei they need to survive. He literally sees the light at the end of the tunnel. However, she gets licked on the leg and is pulled away, and man, there wasn't even time to save her before she's reduced to nothing. I thought he was going to be a coward and run, leaving her behind, but he goes back for the fight. Obviously, time passes. Our boy and Big Idiot enter the room. The couple is still being devoured by the red demon. Our boy, seeing that, says that for weak people, dying in the apocalypse is a kind of freedom, and that they would only suffer otherwise. At least they scream enough for him to find the creature. The system warns that the creature is a zombie that went through a profession change, just like a human. Bosses, of course, evolve their profession much faster than regular zombies. Typically, creatures like this can eat human brains to become smarter. In front of him is a tracker, a bronze-ranked boss. The creature has a ton of stats, level 10, and a bunch of abilities. The creature is watching him confused. It starts pacing, lying down as it watches. The system then warns that the zombie has been detected and a mission is triggered. The tracker's resentment. It seems that this guy was an administrator who suffered in the library, and upon becoming a zombie, he decided to kill everyone who reads books. To understand how the creature fights, our boy first sends Big Idiot. Big Idiot approaches and goes in for an overhead strike. However, just as the attack is about to land, the creature starts to disappear. It turns into a shadow and reappears on the other side of the room behind him. It leaps toward his blind spot to hit him in the neck. However, Lindsay seizes the distraction and slashes the creature's hand. He sneaks up from behind and says, "This is too easy." But man, as he goes for the slash, the creature sprouts 2 more arms and blocks the attack. Then our boy activated his slash and cut off 2 more arms. The little creature ran off desperately, screaming for help in zombie language. Our boy commented that this was way too easy. He counted to 3 and activated his pursuit boots. As soon as he got close enough, he threw his boomerang sword. When it hit, he activated the explosive slash, killing the creature instantly. He gained more experience and a bronze-ranked piece of equipment. The issue, though, is that he'll be stuck at level 10 until he can change his profession. As if having enough power wasn't already an advantage, the system grants him a new hack for reaching level 10. He wonders what it will be, and the system immediately shows him the yin-yang talent, which allows him to have two professions. He's congratulated and he smiles, thinking that with this, maybe he could dominate the whole world. Even he has realized that this hack is pretty unfair to the other players. He hears some zombies approaching and with his eyes closed, activates his spear, defeating all the monsters. He picks up his staff and tells Big Idiot that they need to head to the upper floor. He opens the stairs, sees a few zombies, and orders Big Idiot to deal with them. The profession he wants, Shadow Phantom, boosts his strength and agility, so having another profession that enhances his physical and mental stats would be ideal. The problem is that he knows the Dragon City doesn't have any of the so-called super professions. He checks the items he received and hands Big Idiot a green hammer. Then he opens the silver staff and receives a pair of war pants. These reduce negative effects by 20%, and he equips them immediately. He tells his zombie to collect the bodies of the creatures killed by his spear, as he has other things to take care of. He realizes that since the beginner period hasn't ended yet, the profession change isn't available. So he decides it's time to check in with the people in the auditorium. Outside, a bunch of zombies are gathered at the door. It seems the artist ran out of meds and started changing the hair color of the guys, probably Gao Dong. Our boy asks if they can invade the museum. Gao Dong responds that if our boy goes with the 200 members, it's not impossible. He gets all excited knowing that if this plan works, no one will want to compete with him for the position of president. Gao Dong then gives a big speech, rallying all the players and announcing that today they would face a great battle. They would mobilize the whole group to wipe out all the zombies inside the museum. Everyone was eager to get new equipment and level up. Lindsay notices that these people have no idea how much things will change when the beginner period ends. Suddenly, the crowd starts bickering, with everyone wanting someone else's equipment. Once again, they observe the massive horde of zombies gathered in front of the museum. Gubdong asks if our boy is really sure this strategy will work. Our boy says yes. If everyone moves fast enough, no one will get hurt or die. He puts a hand on Gaodong's shoulder and tells him to seize this opportunity because chances like this are rare. Gubdong says he understands and promises to do his best. The group signals they're ready. Our boy tells everyone that he's the fastest and will attract the first wave of zombies. He'll leave Big Idiot behind to help Gaodong, who thanks him. Now is time to kick off the plan and finally get that profession change. He takes off running and the group wishes him luck. As he runs, he carries some zombie meat, which lures all the zombies toward him. The group uses the opportunity to pass unnoticed. He hands the meat to another guy, telling him to keep running while he handles the creatures. It was an important mission, and they would earn great rewards. The poor guy is so moved he's almost in tears. Obviously, Lin can't waste time attracting zombies since he needs to level up, so he charges ahead, cutting down a good number of the creatures. After a while, he approaches a room. He knew this was where the class change scroll was kept. In his previous life, countless people risked their lives just to get it, but this time, it would be his. He punches the glass, but nothing happens. He unleashes a flurry of JoJo-style strikes, and it finally begins to crack. After expending a lot of energy, the glass shatters. He discovers a strange scroll and gains 500 prestige points. The system then asks if he wants to accept the scroll's summoning. He accepts, places his hand on it, and is instantly transported. He finds himself in another place surrounded by flames. He approaches a wall and passes through a portal, activating the approval for the class change. He would have to complete 3 challenges, and in this place, all his abilities were deactivated. Time flowed differently here, and dying meant being obliterated. But of course, he has a hack and activates the test of the ancient ancestors. Now, not only will he receive a new class, but he'll also get a new hack and a little treasure chest as usual. Apparently, he was also offered a different class from thousands of years ago. He knows the Phantom Assassin profession has only been around for a few thousand years, so this other one seems much more interesting. He asks the system what's going on, but doesn't respond and disappears. He has no choice, so he accepts the mission. With that, the first test begins. The system tells him to place his hand on the orb. As soon as he touched the orb, the flow of energy inside changed and a red aura began to emerge. Suddenly, he felt a strange energy take over his body. The next moment, when he opened his eyes, he found himself in the middle of nowhere. He crouched down and touched the liquid, which seemed to be a sea of blood. He started walking through it until a tornado appeared above him. In his past life, it took him a long time to pass this test, and he only survived because he was driven by the hatred he felt for his ex-girlfriend. But now, he wasn't the same person anymore. The tornado swirled overhead, pulling everything into the air. The blood started to rise, but he remained still. His face was already covered in the blood, but time passed and he stood firm. This was a test of survival against emotions like hatred and fear, and he easily passed. A voice from above declared it enough and told him he could return. When he found himself back in the cave, the system instructed him to proceed to the second test. A portal for the second trial appeared. He stepped through and began walking in what seemed like space. As he walked, a voice told him to give up, saying that as soon as he fainted, he moved to the third phase. His body felt the pressure of the environment. The farther he walked, the better the profession and stats he'd receive. Knowing everything he'd been through in his past life and the people he faced, he couldn't give up now. He clenched his fists and kept walking. Suddenly, a golden light appeared behind him. When he turned, it seemed like he had found the exit. In this life, it seemed he had truly made it to the end. For the first time, this kid was crying, emotional that he had actually achieved something. He was congratulated for passing the second test, and now it was time for the last one. Of course, the final test was the hardest, but without hesitation, he stepped into the portal and arrived in a cave. The system informed him that he had to defeat the Guardian. He stretched out the sword he had obtained earlier and waited. Soon, a strange fluctuation in the air appeared in the corner of the cave. From it, a small black kitten jumped out. Mana thought it was going to be a mega boss, but it was just a little kitten. He seemed disappointed, saying he had waited so long just for something like this to show up. In the past, this had given him a lot of trouble, and he had suffered. But in this life, with all the talents he had, it wasn't going to be as difficult. He closed his eyes, sensing something approaching. At that moment, the energy shifted, and seemed to come from above. But he was ready, and with a swift slash, he struck the kitten. The cut that this cursed thing had inflicted on him in the past, he now returned. Had me gotten that scar from another creature? Or am I going crazy with this Alzheimer's again? Anyway, the kitten fell dead. Our boy had finally passed the third test. The class change scroll for Phantom Assassin appeared. What seemed strange was that he was still in the room. He wasn't sure if this was a bonus or if he was stuck because of his hack. He started looking around, asking if this was the system's fault. That's when he noticed that he hadn't yet received the true power of the scroll. He decided to begin the activation to see if anything else would happen. He asked the system where he was going next, but it didn't respond. He realized that somehow, the scroll was interfering with his hack. He decided to keep searching the room. After scouring the cave, he found what seemed to be a strange fissure. When he touched it with his finger, a golden light began to appear. Suddenly, an image of an ox and a phoenix appeared, the same symbols from the scroll. The image fixed itself on the wall and the ground began to shift. The strange image then turned into a small door. He approached and opened the door to the room. At the back, there was an orb and another scroll. He approached and opened the scroll where it was written Shai Yu. The scroll seemed to be the final test of an emperor who had been killed long ago. He read that he had to place his hand on the painting. As soon as he touched it, the system informed him that an unknown lineage had been discovered. After analyzing the energy, it began to change his profession. The system then declared that the test was over and that he would receive the profession of Soldier Lord. He was thrilled since he would be able to keep his old talent while gaining a new one. He picked up the orb on the table, which began to merge with his hand. The system notified him that the item could change form and absorb the energy of other equipment to grow stronger. He was amazed at something that could grow without apparent limitations. The orb then jumped to his forehead. After experiencing a headache and waking up, he decided to finish the test, having been in the cave for too long. When he came out, he found a pile of dead zombies around him. He saw the scroll in front of him, and the system informed him that he was still receiving the Soldier Lord profession. With this new profession, instead of gaining 1 attribute point, he now gained 3 strength, 3 physical, and 3 other attributes. He knew that with all these stats, he could easily walk through a horde. For being the first to achieve a profession, he earned the Pioneer's achievement. He took a look at the profession, which had no major surprises except for a mysterious third skill. He grabbed his staff and decided it was time to test the power of the orb. He threw an item toward the orb and commanded it to devour it. The orb glowed and the item vanished. Since it absorbed something with a lot of energy, the orb evolved to silver rank. He then starts testing the orb's function, creating a flame in his hand. Afterward, he transforms the orb into a sword, deciding to keep that form for now. Since he's wielding the orb's sword, he gains 2 abilities related to that form. He then asks the orb to transform into a bow. Immediately, it dissolves and reconstitutes itself. His attributes change as do his abilities. He starts having fun transforming it into different weapon types to see the magic it provides. Eventually, his mental energy runs out and he can no longer change its form. He decides it's time to rest. The entire server receives an announcement that he's reached level 10 and changed his profession. Everyone who's been working hard recognizes the name of this damned guy again. Even the most dedicated players hadn't yet reached level 7. Lindsay then takes some energy recovery items and drinks a potion. The Pioneer title grants him 1,000 prestige points, some coins, and additional attributes. It also reduces the stats of any opponent facing him by 5%. Feeling tired, he tells the system to open the silver-ranked equipment box. Inside, he receives a mask of the Evil Phantom, which hides his information from any player not 5 levels above him. It also has the Evil Gaze ability, which induces fear for 3 seconds. He equips the mask and activates its phantom effect. Now all that remained was checking the hack he would receive. Since he had now obtained his first profession and surpassed level 11, he could equip another ring. Unfortunately, he had already fused all of his rings, so he'd need to get another one. For now, he had 2 extra attribute points left, which he immediately used. The night passes and he sets out for another hunt the next day. Outside, everyone was celebrating having cleared the museum. Govdong, accompanied by Big Idiot, steps up to make an announcement. He congratulates everyone and says the mission was a great success, then introduces the person who made the biggest contribution, Big Idiot, equipped with our boy's gear. At that moment, Lindsay shows up wearing his demonic mask. Govdong says it's good to see him as he was worried something had happened. For the first time, we see a girl looking somewhat smitten by Lin Z, aside from that one who disappeared after 2 chapters. Gabdom announces that they killed over 1,500 zombies and Big Idiot alone took down more than 100. Afterward, Godong calls Lin Z to the warehouse and shows him a pile of loot boxes, saying all of it was the spoils from the mission. He thanks Lin Z again and asks if they could talk more later, reminding him that the more people he has, the more power he can wield. With the numbers they had here, he could do whatever he wanted. Lin Z ponders this, thinking that if he gathered more people, he could get more equipment and perhaps advance faster to diamond rank. Not to mention, he had so many resources that sharing food wouldn't be a problem. Plus, he could sell what he didn't need to the others for coins. So he tells Gaodong they could discuss a trade. However, Gaodong puts a hand on his shoulder, saying Lin Z was the key to their success and could ask for whatever he wanted. Our boy doesn't hold back and says he wants equipment. Gaodong, already expecting this, says he understands how hard it is to come by such things. He tells Lin Z to hold out his hand as he had prepared a surprise. He places a ring in Lin Z's hand, telling him it's the best thing they found during the mission. Gaodong assures him that if he ever needs anything in the future, all he has to do is ask. Gaodong is thrilled with this gift, thinking it'll keep Lin Z by his side. Lin Z then announces that he wants to meet everyone at 7 o'clock to discuss the end of the beginner period. In truth, his plan is to trap them all in the warehouse so they can't escape when the period ends, ensuring they all die. This is his twisted way of thanking them for being so kind and giving him the ring. However, Gaodong assures him that they're no longer beginners so they won't die. Gaodong thanks him again and promises to inform everyone, asking how they should handle the exchanges. Lin Z tells him that when the time comes, he'll explain everything, deciding not to push the issue since they don't seem interested in listening to him right now. With that, he leaves and Gaodong mentions they don't need any resource letters. But Lin Z knew something was bound to happen. Later, Lin Z is in his room, playing with the orb and creating various items. After feeding it all the equipment he had, the orb finally advances to gold rank. He was surprised as he thought he wouldn't receive anything of this rank until around level 30. Additionally, the gold-ranked item has double the attributes and causes bleeding damage. He heads to the window where a horde of zombies is gathered and says they've arrived just in time. He throws his dagger, which dissolves in the air, slicing through everything. He calls Big Idiot, telling him it's time to get to work. That night, they continued eliminating countless zombies, eventually piling up bodies. Out of nowhere, Lin Z advanced to level 15. He was making the most of the end of the beginner period, but the time had run out. He calls Big Idiot and says it's time to head back. What's strange is that despite killing a massive number of zombies, the horde didn't seem to be thinning. He runs to a hotel and shuts the doors. Finally, 7 o'clock arrives. The sky turns red, signaling the end of the beginner period. With that, the true apocalypse game began. Before, it was a fair system without interference, but now it was the real deal. The zombies gained more attributes, all their senses improved, and they evolved even faster. Additionally, many zombies now had classes and abilities. Just like humans, they would organize themselves and launch large-scale attacks on player bases. At night, zombie attributes would increase even more than usual, while the player's attributes would decrease. All materials became more durable, and the only available food would be the game's provisions as the world's normal food began to decompose. The climate would change and zombies would now drop better items. New professions, a national ranking system, and dungeons were introduced. Lastly, new updates would arrive as conditions were met. In this life, it was already difficult, but in the past, it had been impossible. He received a message wishing him luck in surviving. As he looked outside, the creatures were already undergoing mutation. The world had finally become a true live-or-die scenario. With contaminated water and food decomposing instantly, everyone would need to hunt. The only way to get food was by killing zombies, but of course, it wasn't going to be that easy. Amidst all this chaos, he calls Big Idiot and is in for a surprise. Big Idiot was also mutating. His clothes exploded and electricity began surging from his body. The problem was that he started losing his mind and our boy asked what was happening. The system explained that it was a conflict between the authority of his ability and the mutation process. His physical form wouldn't change, but he'd receive a 50% boost in attributes and might even be able to change his profession. Our boy was already excited, wanting to give his zombie a legendary profession. Big Idiot received a legendary power talent that increased the amount of status he gained. Meanwhile, our boy started receiving a barrage of congratulations for reaching various ranks. The system asked if he wanted to announce it to everyone or hide his name. Loving attention, our boy chose to announce it to the world. When he checked the rank, he found out that Big Idiot was rank number 3. The problem with being on this ranking was that all his information, including his equipment, was visible to everyone. He started wondering if showing everything about himself was really the best idea. In the past, this would have been a concern, since he was a target of the Lee family, but now they didn't exist anymore. So he decided not to hide, especially since he had the mask, meaning no one would know he was really Jia Yi. On top of that, his rank 1 position gave him many extra rewards, which would be perfect for building a base with a lot of people. For having the highest level, reputation, and equipment, he received the title Unmatched in the World. This title would only be maintained as long as he stayed at the top of everything. If he lost any position, the title would disappear. With this title, he gained an additional 10% in attributes and a 10% discount at stores. He was thrilled because with so many extra attributes, it would be easy to maintain his position. Additionally, it increased his item drop rate by 1%. However, since he already had a 100% drop rate, he was confused. The system explained that with the 100%, he would now receive double the items. At this point, I'm not sure how many more ranks this kid can achieve or if he even needs anything else. He calls Big Idiot and tells him it's time to test everything out. But as soon as he opens the door, a zombie rushes toward him. He tries to slash it, but the zombie retreats. Stretching out his hand, he uses his heart to finish off the first enemy. He was almost caught because that zombie had the stealth talent. As he walked through the city, he noticed a group of zombies throwing poison around. He hated dealing with these types and told Big Idiot to start running. Those zombies weren't strong, but getting close enough to finish them off would be a hassle. He spots something and tells Big Idiot to follow. He enters a house, shuts the door, and traps a zombie at the entrance. Then he climbs out through the window and slips away. Meanwhile, at the base, everyone was being devoured. Our boy entered and found everyone in a terrible state, questioning why they worked so hard only to die in such a stupid way. They were about to run out of resources and die soon. A girl suggested everyone should just eat what was left since the end was near. But for Lin Zi, this was the opportunity he had been waiting for. He began walking and announced that he was there to help everyone survive and find hope. He offered to sell food, equipment, and anything else they needed for a cheap price. Instantly, everyone who couldn't kill zombies rushed forward, desperate for supplies. Our boy began negotiating, quickly earning over 10,000 coins. Everyone who bought from him left happy, knowing it was their only chance to survive. He then said he was going to sleep and warned everyone not to make any noise or Big Idiot would kill them. Godong, with his newly dyed hair, had been quietly observing from the shadows. Finally, Lin Zi appeared and asked how they were doing. Godong said that from now on, Lin Zi could coordinate the entire place and everyone would follow his orders. Lin Zi leaned in and whispered something in Godong's ear. Godong nodded, saying he understood and would comply. With that, he took off running. Our boy hoped it would work out, but even if the guy didn't succeed, he had nothing to lose. He went into his room, eager for the next day. Now, with the new mutated zombies, he'd be able to obtain far better equipment and items. Plus, he planned to have everyone from the base help him farm. In the next scene, he and Big Idiot were already outside. In no time, a horde of zombies jumped at them, but just a second later, all of them were lying on the ground defeated. Our boy declared that they'd clear out everything so the players could start venturing outside a bit. He cleaned out all the zombies from a building that had a shop. It was the perfect place to set up a base as he could negotiate and buy things directly from there. As long as no one knew about the shop, no one would want to attack it. However, when he opened the door, he found a bald guy. Another man stepped forward and asked who he was, warning that his group already claimed the area. But the bald guy told him to keep quiet because Big Idiot was right there. The guy at the back was the second strongest in China, so they better be careful. Even Lin Zi hadn't realized that they'd ranked up again and passed into second place. The men stretched out their arms and welcomed him, saying he could do whatever he wanted there. Big Idiot wanted to kill them all, but Lin Zi's calmer side told him to relax since they were only there to shop. With that, they headed into the store and the men said nothing more. The bald guy remarked that the two seemed strong, but they had far more numbers and might be able to handle them. However, the captain warned that it was foolish to think that way. Lin Zi had probably killed more zombies than they had people, so it wasn't worth taking the risk. Inside the store, our boy wanted to buy the city's Medal of Honor. As soon as he obtained it, he grinned and thought. And you remember that the last chapter ended right when Lin Zi went to get the city's honor mark. He knew they needed to secure that item before anyone else could. He successfully acquires it, spending 9,000 gold coins and having 7,300 left. As soon as it goes into his inventory, he activates it immediately. The first effect of the mark allowed him to strengthen equipment that was breaking. The second weakened anyone who fought against him in the city of Mu. And lastly, as long as he was in the city of Mu, he could also summon a robot with the same stats as him, but it would only last for 10 minutes. The system warns that this is a unique item that can only be purchased once. Sneaky Lin Zi was already thinking about buying 10 marks and summoning a bunch of robots just like him. On the other hand, the item's description stated that the attributes were calculated based on his own, but it didn't specify the exact ratio. With that, he leaves the area and heads outside the city. In an open area, there was some kind of tube with swords and weapons drawn on it. A ball of blue light appeared, and a guy on top of a wall said that the zombies should have already been cleared out so it was safe. A blonde guy pointed at the ball and said that this was where the job change method was announced. His friends started considering that maybe, for now, they should look around for weapons and more supplies. However, like a proper dumb side character, she went ahead and touched the ball without knowing what it was. The red-haired friend told her not to touch it, but it was too late. She was already being surrounded by a dark aura. A blue light started rising, everyone protected the purple one, and they all seemed to be surrounded by a barrier. The entire place was covered in smoke, and the blonde guy asked why the hell she always did things like this. The girl, already looking rough, said she had no idea and apologized, but now, girl, you probably just got everyone killed. One of them pulled out a flashlight from who knows where and said they should stop arguing and find a way out. But the blonde told him to look behind him, and sure enough, the giant zombie had already swung a hammer. There was a level 18 bronze rank boss, and they couldn't even see its strength. From the bloody hand, the guy was already gone, and now everyone had that dumbfounded look on their faces. The monster grinned, charged forward, and soon enough, all that was left on the ground were arms. The creature went up to the barrier, seemed to strike it, but nothing happened. It let out a roar of frustration, and finally it seemed like that test was over and the barrier dropped. As smoke cleared and it was free to roam the city. At that moment, someone nearby said that this was the result of being careless. He turned to the two behind him and said this was why you shouldn't talk to anyone or touch anything. Meanwhile, in the background, someone was approaching with their big idiot. The three ran off and soon saw our boy passing by. Completely calm with his mask, looking more like a beast than his own beast. The guy in the black jacket said that two more idiots had arrived just to die, but the one in green said he heard this guy was ranked number 2 in China. The girl asked if they thought he could kill that zombie, and the guy said it was possible. The other guy kept doubting, saying that the ones who died were experts, so even if he managed to scratch the creature, he wouldn't be able to kill it. His friend pointed out the obvious and said they should just wait there, and if he died, they could take his loot. But then they heard a scream, and Lindsay told his monster that there were 3 idiots over there, but they weren't worth wasting time on. He went to the hole where the orb was, knowing that the boss of this place was a berserker-type creature. The system notified that the reward would be a scroll for switching to the berserker class, and in addition, when the battle started, a barrier would rise. There was a hidden condition. The more people fought the boss, the stronger it became and the better the rewards. Our boy remembered a city where so many people died to the boss that it reached level 40. He approached the crystal, saw the pool of blood, and picked up some things from the ground. While checking the items from those who died, he casually gave the bubble a little tap. Meanwhile, the other guy was watching the danger zone from afar. A system notified that our boy had touched the orb and forcefully activated the job change in the city of Mu. Actually, I said it wrong. The fewer people doing the challenge, the better the rewards, and since it was just him and one other person, this was definitely going to be one of the best possible outcomes. The system, in all its trickery, detected that a mission had been activated around him and decided to give him some extra help. The reward window popped up and the best prize was a high-ranked profession, but it would be random. Lindsay told the big idiot that he'd take the mage profession and the other guy could have the warrior one. Man, I have noticed that this thing was that big. The bronze rank monster had already leveled up to 19 after killing the 3 dumbasses. Our boy congratulated it, saying that it truly deserved its Titan title. It made perfect sense. They were messing around like idiots, and our boy was certain that, given the boss's conditions, this was going to be easy. As soon as the mission activated, he started preparing an arrow shot with his bow. While the boss was eager to consume our boy's power, he fired the first shot, and the creature brought both arms together to defend itself. At that moment, the boy commanded the big idiot, who jumped with the hammer in hand. But even then, the boss managed to defend himself once again. However, the big idiot created a shockwave, and our boy landed a freezing arrow. He celebrated his accuracy while the boss struggled to understand why his arm was covered in ice. Suddenly, the monster let out a roar and Lindsay froze in place. That was a Titan ability that left him paralyzed for a few seconds. He told his monster to stop the creature, which held off another attack. With that, the boss reached for his own arm, pulled out the arrow, and roared again. Man, this boss was so fast that he had already swung a hammer before I even saw him pick it up. Our boy barely dodged and activated a fire and ice ability on his bow. He unleashed an attack of each element, striking the monster's leg, arm, and back. A near-perfect headshot turned the monster into a bald, burnt mess. And that truly was a man's greatest fear. Our boy realized that the creature must have been a construction worker before dying, now was dealing with cement. But turning his back on an enemy was dangerous, so he needed to finish it off. He fired another arrow, but the monster had already raised a shield. Lindsay couldn't believe that bastard pulled something like that out of nowhere. Man, the new artist had arrived. Big Idiot 2.0, and who would have thought he knew how to draw? Our boy told his monster to go in with the Berserker ability, and as soon as it activated, he leaped toward the boss. The punch seemed to land perfectly, breaking the shield, but now the two were grappling while our boy tried to aim. He shot an arrow, aiming for the back, but judging by the reaction and his pain, it was easy to tell where it actually hit. The monster slammed the idiot into the ground, pulled out the arrow, and turned toward our boy, roaring. It was trying to say its innocence was gone, but it couldn't speak. Before our boy could explain that it wasn't on purpose, the boss was already right in front of him, about to throw a punch. But the big idiot jumped on its back and grabbed it by the neck. He threw it to the ground in MMA style, but the monster managed to grab his arm and flip on top of him. Lindsay fired another arrow, hitting the exact same spot as before. Even he felt the monster's pain now. He then told the boss that he knew it wouldn't believe him if he said it was an accident both times. The monster pulled out another arrow, but at this point, it was already crawling on the ground in pain. Our boy ordered the big idiot to dodge and unleash a flurry of arrows in its direction. The creature tried to move aside, but every shot landed squarely on the boss. Smoke rose from the impact of the explosion, and our boy wondered if he had won. But then the system notified him that due to his despicable fighting methods, the boss had reached maximum berserker state. This evolved it straight into a silver rank creature. Lindsay had always known about evolutions before death. He just didn't expect it to jump an entire rank. Additionally, all of its stats and talents were enhanced. Each of its abilities now had a much stronger effect than before. The system stated that since the mission had become significantly harder, the rewards would also improve. The boss then prepared to charge at Lin Z, who knew he had to use everything he had. Once again, he dodged by retreating backward and fired another series of arrows. One struck its arm, but as soon as it did, the creature's instant regeneration kicked in. He then switched to his sword and attempted to decapitate the boss. But the monster managed to evade, and the attack landed on its chest, making it feel some damage. The problem was that the big idiot had spent too much energy and had to eat to recover. But our boy didn't just have the big idiot anymore. So he summoned the City of Mu's robot, which would last for 10 minutes. Along with it, he also summoned the zombie cat. Activating a deep cutting ability on his sword, he charged at the boss. One slash and the creature staggered backward. However, due to the skill, our boy was locked in place for 2 seconds. The monster crashed to the ground and the robot advanced. It landed a knee strike straight to the jaw. The little cat was already at its feet, joining in with a flurry of scratches, claw swipes, and cuts. The boss tried to escape from being pinned down, but by now, our boy had recovered and landed another slash on its arm. The only issue was that controlling these new creatures with his consciousness was incredibly exhausting. The boss then punched the ground, triggering a shockwave. Lindsay jumped to evade, but meanwhile, the big idiot was changing colors. Man, I keep telling you, the artists here have all sorts of memory glitches. But just as he was getting up, the shockwave hit him. Lindsay finally landed on the ground, but he was amazed that the boss had used Titan's Fury at a time like this. And according to the description, the more times it used that punch, the stronger it would get, meaning things would only get worse. At least one of his arms was completely damaged, so he had a chance. Once again, he charged for the boss, which came at him with a one-punch man-style strike. Man, the impact sent our boy flying. I think he managed to dodge it. As soon as he hit the ground, he found himself face-to-face with another arm and landed a clean slash right on the monster's nape. The creature was writhing in agony, and the system notified him that it detected our boy fighting with more than one person, meaning the reward would be reduced. He decided to ignore that and charge at the boss again, knowing he couldn't let it recover. After a series of attacks, the creature finally seemed to collapse. Just as our boy was about to jump, a group of people started taking advantage of the moment to enter the arena. He warned everyone nearby that they could take the rewards without actually participating, which was incredible. Everyone was excited to see what class they would receive. The girl tried to warn them that this guy had just killed the boss, so they should be afraid of him instead. But the leader told her to shut up, saying that once he got his new profession, he would start playing with her. When a guy says something like that, you already know he's about to die. And look who showed up behind them. Our boy was radiating an aura, and the guys immediately turned, congratulating the great Jia Yi. He said he had watched the fight and tried to jump in to help, but he didn't expect to arrive just as it was about to end. Others started saying they were fans, but our boy cut in, asking what kind of nonsense that was. Weren't they just hiding up there, waiting for the perfect moment to jump in right when he was about to kill the boss? The moment the guy realized he'd been exposed, he got flustered, tried to explain himself, but too late, he was already cut down. Our boy simply stated that they were a bunch of hypocrites. He flicked the blood from his sword onto the ground and said that people like them were the ones he despised the most. With a glance back, our boy activated the demon's gaze. At that moment, the guy in the green hood seemed affected, turned, and attacked his own ally, starting a brawl. Bodies started piling up, and the rewards kept increasing as the number of players dwindled. One of them shouted at our boy, saying he was supposed to be the hero here. And the one in yellow argued that as a hero, he should be helping everyone get stronger instead of just trying to survive alone. He needed to understand that if he killed them all there before he could even finish, our boy had already taken down another one. The guy who was talking immediately covered his mouth, realizing that saying too much meant he'd be next. The protagonist told them to go and spread the word, let everyone know what happens to those who try to steal his rewards. The guys were shaking, terrified, as he simply made a throat-slitting gesture. Not long after, a pile of bodies had accumulated. Standing over the boss, our boy thought they were fools for trying to use morality against him. Maybe when the Lee family was hunting him down, they should have used all that righteousness to help him instead of letting him suffer for so long. With that, the boss was finally finished and he received his rewards. Since the difficulty had increased to silver rank, his rewards were doubled as well. The first chest appeared, and of course he went straight to open it. Inside, there was a scroll and a feather. The scroll stated that since he had activated the profession change station, a statue of him would be erected. Anyone who wanted to change professions in this city would have to go to that statue and pay a certain amount of gold, with him getting a cut of it. Obviously, he signed his name without hesitation. Ariana's mission was completed, earning him even more rewards, and then the previously dormant orb began to glow. The items that had been embedded in the stone were now released. The players knew good rewards were coming because the system always boosted things at moments like this. The problem was that there seemed to be a bunch of people behind him, and he wasn't in the mood to deal with that. He smacked the big idiot on the face a couple of times and told them to get out of there quickly. They left, and elsewhere in the city, a blue light appeared as people wondered if the boy had managed to defeat the boss. The poor guys were still sulking, saying that every time Lindsay kept everything for himself, while all they wanted was to grab a piece of the reward, without doing anything, of course. Bunch of freeloaders. At that moment, a global announcement was made about the day's achievement and the activation of the profession exchange system in the city of Mu. Since this was the first city to activate the system, for the next 24 hours, everyone's chances of obtaining items were doubled, along with extra experience and gold. Everyone in the entire city also leveled up once, and they were all celebrating. The girls, of course, became instant fans of our boy. Meanwhile, the other guys were losing their minds. What a brutal scene. From far away, someone commented that yesterday they had attempted the boss fight with 30 people, yet they had all died. The guy was standing there with a headband bearing our boy's name, 2 corpses on the ground, and his arms wide open, declaring that he was truly the great savior. In a room somewhere, another man mentioned that Jia Yi was originally from their city, but when everything started, he had gone to the city of Mu. However, since he had always lived here, he would eventually return to his homeland. Elsewhere in the city, the big idiot was chilling. Meanwhile, our boy was just scrolling through his massive list of rewards. He was already level 16 with 12,000 gold coins. Completely confident, he muttered that he didn't want to attract attention, but now it was impossible not to. One of the class change scrolls was for Overlord, a class where every point invested in strength would grant him 4 points instead. For him, this was a great way to save points and invest everything else in agility, since strength would always remain high. Additionally, his automatic item collection had also leveled up to rank 2. He considered it a great advantage as it guaranteed that when fighting hordes, he wouldn't lose a single item. Then he asked about the event where everyone would receive double items, wondering if they would still get at least 1% since 1% was the basic rate. But the system told him no, he wouldn't receive just double the base chance. He would get 200%. With that, the equipment he obtained included a chestplate and pants. Both items were perfect for fighting against opponents who relied heavily on magic. Since they had the attribute of being concealable, he equipped them, and it was as if they weren't even there. Perfect. His stats were still well balanced, and now was time to claim those items the system occasionally handed out. It was just a small potion to improve his physique, which wasn't a big deal for him. Feeling himself a little too much, After a while, he knelt down, saying that now was truly the time to open the boss loot. He started chanting Amitabha, hoping for something good. He pulled out a profession scroll that granted extra strength, a bit of physique, and some points to allocate. The problem was, it wasn't particularly useful for either him or the big idiot, so he stored it away since it wouldn't be of much use. Then he opened one of the last chests. Inside was a watermelon cutting knife that boosted his agility. However, to activate its effect, he had to shout, "Who wants fresh watermelon?" Because of that, he decided to just feed it to another weapon instead. It was time to return to the hunt after all. With 24 hours of double loot, he had to make the most of it. He grabbed a recovery potion, started drinking, and called the big idiot over, telling him that today was going to be a long workday. To keep him motivated, he promised a big roast chicken every 20 minutes of kills. With that, the two were pumped up and headed out the door. Our boy hit the ground in front of a zombie, glanced back, and saw a huge fat one with its belly sagging low. Before the creature could do much, he slashed at it, demanding it hand over its double rewards. Then he ordered the big idiot to slam the ground with his hammer, making as much noise as possible to attract every monster in the city. While his friend drew the creatures in, our boy was cutting them all down. Seconds later, he looked around and was completely surrounded by the horde. That was exactly what he wanted. Meanwhile, in another room, some people were monitoring the equipment rankings, noticing that the top 6 best items all belonged to him. The leaders of the Yun and in families were curious about who this person really was. The man on the left told the younger one to keep quiet. After all, he was only there because his father had died. But the silver-haired guy asked if he really thought his own children were better than him. Besides, he knew their boss was in the city of Mu, so it was best not to mess with that guy. The old man with glasses told them to focus on the real issue, figuring out who Jia Yi truly was. One of them commented that they first needed to uncover his appearance and real name to determine how to deal with him. The silver-haired man simply said they should take full advantage of the apocalypse. The world had already fallen into chaos. Why not become the new rulers of this world? If Jia Yi couldn't be used, they would just kill him and take his equipment. Everyone fell silent, glancing at each other. The scene then shifted back to the streets, where for the first time I saw a girl who actually looked healthy, I think. Everyone hunting was grinning, excited by the double loot and extra experience. The entire city seemed motivated to keep hunting through the night. Meanwhile, in his hotel, our boy was organizing his inventory. He looked outside, watching the fights taking place. Among the crowd was a guy named Zhang Yuanzhang. In his past life, he had been ranked number 2, but now he was struggling. He had also been the one who triggered the announcement of the statue and leveled up quickly afterward. But the opportunity had passed. Our boy realized that what he had been doing was altering the lives of countless people. But to him, it didn't really matter, as long as he got stronger and could face his enemies. He reached into his backpack, pulled out a bunch of items, and started feeding them to his sword to keep evolving it. Then he smelled something awful in the room and wondered if his friend had farted. The big idiot pointed at himself. That's when our boy realized that ever since everything started, he had barely taken a bath. So he ran to the bathroom, and a short while later, he was feeling much better. He tossed a towel onto the big idiot's face and said it was time to sleep. Exhausted from the long day, he quickly passed out. The moon was red as the two rested in the room, and inside the toilet, something began to emerge. An eye appeared, followed by a massive rat crawling out. Our boy woke up just in time to turn his head and see the rat staring at him. The creature lunged at him immediately, but he remained calm, wondering why there was a mutant in his room. The poor thing was sliced in half, but it made a mess all over the bed. Then he started hearing the sound of countless rats scurrying through the city. Outside, the streets were covered in a fog of mutant rats. As soon as one bit another, they were devoured instantly. Our boy stood at the door with the big idiot, trying to figure out what was happening. The system hadn't announced any events or missions. So why were these creatures swarming like this? Maybe it was an effect of everything he had been doing, but it was strange. Looking out the window, he saw that there weren't too many zombie rats yet, so maybe he was overreacting. He wondered if he should go back to sleep, but then he remembered. If the noise was loud enough to wake him up, there had to be something more going on. Looking outside, he noticed the swarm of rats was pouring out of a sewer. They were moving in an organized manner as if they were being controlled by some kind of leader. He turned to the big idiot and said they needed to take a look from above. On the top floor of the building, he approached the railing to observe the street. There were rats of all sizes, including some that were more evolved mutants. As usual, the bastard was already thinking about how much loot he could get if he killed them all. The problem was that there were far more of them than one person should face alone. He needed to be careful in this life. He told the big idiot not to move from that spot, equipped the ring of nightfall, and started jumping from rooftop to rooftop. He continued observing the rats' movements, trying to figure out what was going on. That's when he saw that a large number of them were heading toward a house. He knew it was foolish to try to survive in this apocalypse without fighting, but he decided to check it out anyway. Some time passed, and he was just standing there, watching. Nothing was happening. It looked like the rats had entered and disappeared, making him wonder if there was a dungeon inside. Normally, dungeons would start appearing later, but maybe his influence on the game had changed things. Obviously, he needed to check it out before anyone else. He called for the big idiot, and as soon as his friend arrived, they were ready to head out. Just then, a flock of crows flew over them. Both of them ducked under cover on the rooftop, and our boy warned to be careful. Something was controlling all the animals. Once again, the rat fog appeared, and now the birds were part of it too. Now he was more curious than ever about what was inside that mansion. They climbed down from the building and observed the house from across the street. Finally, the fog seemed to be thinning. This was their chance to check it out. Or maybe not, because now even the animals from the zoo were showing up. All the monsters rushed through the door, and once again, our boy realized he would have to wait this one out. Inside the mansion, a golden portal was visible, and all the creatures were entering it. More and more animals kept arriving, and the sun was already rising. Our boy was still waiting, wondering if it was finally over. He checked the area again and celebrated. Finally, it seemed like it had ended. He called the big idiot over and said that now they would get to the bottom of this mystery. As he approached the portal, the system congratulated him for discovering a secret dungeon and asked if he wanted to enter. Our boy explained that in his past life, there were two types of dungeons. One where players fought each other, and another that teleported a person to a place full of creatures where they could earn rewards. Since he had dungeon experience from his past life, he felt confident this wouldn't be too difficult. He asked if there was any safety mechanism, and the system said that if he was ever in danger, he could request to leave. With that guarantee, he activated the dungeon immediately. The only problem was that the big idiot couldn't be forcibly removed by the system, so he shoved his friend back and told him to stay put. Our boy found it strange that the big idiot was so obedient today, but without hesitation, he entered the dungeon and drew his sword. This time, he would have to handle it alone. Right after entering, he found himself in a stone chamber. He knocked on the walls, didn't hear anything suspicious, then slashed at them just in case. Seeing that there were no traps nearby, the dungeon activated. It was a maze where he had to find the exit, filled with mutated animals and numerous traps. He had a time limit of 10 years, after which he would be forcibly removed. Then the dungeon system announced that due to a special activation, it would be redesigned. Our boy was a bit confused. He was sure he had entered through the right teleport. Then he paused to think. Maybe the gate was just a way to lure in the animals, and he had ended up entering along with them. Apparently, he wasn't supposed to be here. But since he couldn't rely on the system, there was no reason to be afraid. Even though the big idiot wasn't there, he still had the 9-form sword. A message then appeared, saying the dungeon had been modified to match his combat abilities. A red aura appeared above, and our boy started celebrating, thinking the difficulty had been reduced. But I'd say he's so strong now that maybe it actually got harder. And just like that, the system notified him that because he had entered the dungeon before it was ready, he would receive a 50% penalty. He received a system mission to complete the dungeon. He accepted it immediately and began moving through the corridors. He advanced cautiously, triggering traps and dodging them. Or maybe not so cautiously, because he was suddenly dragged away. He realized that the penalty for discovering the dungeon early was stronger than he had expected. He couldn't even think of a single player outside who would be able to block this besides himself. And at that moment, another barrage of arrows came flying at him. He ran straight toward them, then threw himself to the side at the last second, barely dodging. That was a close call. There was no way he could have blocked that many arrows. So he tried again, moving his sword around to see if any more arrows would trigger. After confirming the test, he was able to walk down the corridor. In a way, he was starting to feel excited about this. Lately, everything had been too easy, but this had real risk. He kept walking until he stepped on something. Looking down, he saw a skeleton. He figured it was just there for effect. After all, he was the first to activate this dungeon, so no one else could have died here. Further down the corridor, he saw a door labeled 1 and knocked on it, as if calling for someone. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, a giant rat lunged at him. But a weak creature like that barely stood a chance. It went down instantly, turning into experience. They even dropped a fried rice card, which he ate on the spot. After filling his stomach, it was time to move again. He was lucky to have found this dungeon right after changing professions. Otherwise, it would have been much harder. Once again, he had to choose between left and right. He went right. He tapped the wall with his sword. Nothing happened. As he reached a four-way intersection, an attack came from behind, exactly from where he had just come. He opened door 2 and took down a few more rats with ease. Then door 001, this time it was a mutant rat boss, but it too became experience in seconds. Using its blood, he marked the walls to start mapping his route. He began understanding the pattern. One door had normal enemies, one had bosses, and one was a dead end. The numbers didn't represent difficulty, but rather the number of creatures inside. If 001 was a single boss, then 002 would have 2 bosses. Meanwhile, 2 alone would have 2 regular monsters. The creatures were getting stronger and the traps more dangerous. He opened 002, and his guess was confirmed: 2 bronze-rank bosses. They attacked, but they were still too weak, more easy experience. He also got an agility fruit, which, shocker, boosted agility. Days passed. On the 4th day, his sword reached 100% and evolved into a diamond-rank weapon. His cutting and stunning slash abilities improved. All of his techniques were now stronger. Low-rank enemies became effortless kills. While he farmed in the city of Mu, players were excited about reaching level 10. Some wondered where the legendary Jiaye had gone. One speculated he might be dead, but the rankings still showed him at level 17. Back in the labyrinth, he sliced through 3 bosses, but these were smarter. They dodged. He acknowledged the difficulty increase, but it was still manageable. However, after killing a level 9 boss, an explosion trap activated. Despite that, he gained more experience and a bronze-ranked chest. When he reached for it, he was ambushed again. Dodging, countering, and slaying more enemies, he continued farming and gaining loot. He acquired the Eye of Discernment, allowing him to analyze living creatures. He could now see players' professions, titles, stats, talents, and skills. Scanning zombies, he identified their weaknesses. With this, he could pinpoint strong opponents' vulnerabilities. He kept feeding his sword materials, progressing through doors. Then he reached one marked 41, full of crows. Scanning them, he noticed one had a wounded right wing, a perfect target, but there were 40 more. He continued farming until he reached a dead end. Something felt off. This should have been the exit. Then he found a golden dragon emblazoned door. Inside, a golden sphere awaited. The system announced, Dungeon of Despair completed. His rewards adjusted. He obtained 2 cheats, the key of advancement, and the water and fire sources. Then he found a scroll about Fu Exe, a hero from Chinese mythology. Lindsay suddenly remembered a person who had a power related to this legendary figure. If he could obtain the same ability, it would make all his effort worthwhile. On the ground, a jade necklace appeared. The moment he touched it, elemental forces surrounded his body. Confused, Lindsay was suddenly engulfed in a cocoon. Damn, this jade necklace was dangerous. He was being attacked from all sides with blood seeping from his eyes. Apparently, he had to endure some kind of transformation. As he suffered, constellations formed around him. The cocoon became shrouded in a blue energy, and an aura surged into the sky. Inside, Lindsay struggled to resist. Then the item shattered, and he re-emerged. At that moment, the system detected that he had received energy from an unknown source, from another planet. His class changed to Green Emperor, which was likely related to that legendary figure. The jade necklace floated toward him, surrounded by the 2 elements he had obtained earlier. As soon as he picked it up, the elements started orbiting around him. This granted him the ability to control guess which elements. Holding one in each hand, he was shocked. It felt as if he had suddenly become a mage. Just then, the entire dungeon began to collapse. The power he had received was the very energy that had been sustaining this place. A portal appeared, offering him an exit, and he immediately accepted. The next moment, he was back at the mansion where it all started. And of course, suffering from severe ADHD, the first thing he did was pull out his phone to check the news, only to get a massive shock. He had been in there for 2 whole weeks without realizing it. Turning to the side, he saw that the poor big idiot was still waiting, starving. Lindsay was honestly impressed that the beast hadn't moved from that spot and had been waiting the entire time. Our boy patted his shoulder and promised, "I'll get you some chicken." Checking the rankings, he saw that he was now level 20, while the others were still at level 17. He was still comfortably ahead. Handing his scrolls to the big idiot, he declared it was time to get back to grinding. Meanwhile, outside the mansion, a player named Zhang Yuanzhang had just leveled up to 18. He cheered for finally surpassing the damn Jia Yi, but when he checked the rankings, he nearly had a heart attack. Jia Yi had already hit level 20. At the same time, girls were celebrating, screaming about how their great god had returned. Meanwhile, a silver-haired guy was puzzled. Why had the big idiot stopped leveling up? The shut-in players who did nothing but watch the rankings were utterly confused. How the hell had that kid leveled up so fast all of a sudden? Back in the real world, Lin Zi and the big idiot were stuffing their faces. His Green Emperor profession was still being absorbed. As a result, all of his attributes increased by 3, plus he received 5 additional points to distribute freely. With this class attributes, equipment stats, and bonuses, he had 80 points in every stat. Additionally, his class allowed him to collect special beads that could be used to unlock new elements. By using the 8 trigrams pendant, he could also access related elemental abilities. For Lin Zi, this was perfect. Not only did he have high stats, but he now possessed 2 of the best professions, allowing him to fight both as a mage and a warrior. But then he noticed something weird about the big idiot. The creature was growling in fury, as if desperate to hunt. Lin Zi tried to issue a command, but something weird happened. The damn translator had messed up the text, making it impossible to understand what he was doing. Somehow, he managed to tell the big idiot to release his power. The beast slammed the ground and a shockwave erupted. The next second, Lin Zi looked at his own hands. The elemental energy was swirling around him. He immediately recognized this as a tired profession effect. After a long time, he asked the system to unlock 2 cheats. He received the beast enslavement skill, level 1, but since he already had it, it upgraded to level 2. As they exited the mansion, a global message appeared, notifying the players of Moose City that the combat event was ending. However, the first place reward went to a player named Moyan, while the second place prize went to Shunyu Yoboy. Lin Zi realized that while he was stuck inside the damn labyrinth, those guys had been working hard and winning events. The system then announced that once 30% of the city reached level 10, a combat zone would be unlocked. During this period, players could register to compete for rewards. Lin Zi decided it was time to power level again and ordered the big idiot to smash the ground. The beast obeyed, transforming using the Tyrant ability. The next second, a swarm of monsters flooded the streets. Lin Zi had been missing the thrill of killing these nasty things. A single slash from his evolved sword ripped through the road, cutting straight through the creatures. The big idiot jumped up and crushed them all. Within seconds, a pile of corpses had formed, and as usual, Lin Zi was already checking the system for loot. One of the items he obtained was a fireball scroll. In theory, his class wasn't supposed to control fire, but that wasn't the case anymore. He spread his arms and flames erupted around his body. He condensed the fire, returning it to his hands, and noticed that his control was even better than expected. But suddenly, he lost control and almost set himself on fire. Behind him, an explosion went off, and he realized he would need to practice a lot more than he had expected. Sometime later, after using up many scrolls, he finally had 2 fireballs in his hands. Now he was able to condense them and control them in a much more stable manner. Due to excessive use of the fireball, his Emperor ability allowed him to learn fireball as well. Now he no longer needed to use scrolls, just his own body's energy. Seeing how it worked, he knew he had to find countless other scrolls scattered throughout the city. He immediately called for the big idiot, saying they now had a new goal. If the event in Yuma City was ending, that meant the ones in the other cities were just beginning. Meanwhile, in Jing City at the Li family estate, a man at the table said that being in the top 3 wasn't enough. They needed to reach the very top. A blonde man in armor stood up and said that second place was possible, but first was madness. It seemed that the strongest person in their city was a man named Zhang Yuanchang. This story had the most Chinese names of any Chinese story he had ever seen. The Li family man insisted, but the armored man said there was no way. Zhang Yuanchang had an army. However, the man refused to give up, saying that all the families had joined forces and combined their power, so he couldn't win alone. They would fight for first place, no matter the cost. Everyone in the room agreed, saying they would do their best. With that, the meeting ended, but as they left, the man called Shi Jingshan. He told him to investigate why Rongzhan wasn't in the rankings and to take care of the matter he had assigned. Shi Jingshan left while the head of the Li family had the feeling that something was wrong. The Li family had nearly been destroyed, but they needed to return to the top. He went into a room, moved a vase, and a secret door opened. He entered the hidden chamber, and the door shut behind him. Meanwhile, Lin Zi was practicing his fireballs. He was at the edge of the city, wiping out all the zombies in the area. Most creatures were now around level 12, but his evolved sword was more than enough to handle them. Since mastering fire abilities, he had been thinking about how to distribute his attributes. He told the big idiot that they were about to start a new adventure. A sign indicated that another city was a 50-minute walk ahead. The two headed in that direction and soon found themselves facing a horde of zombies. However, as they tried to enter, a message appeared, stating that the city was still sealed. Only when the seal was broken could they enter. Now it made sense. The key he had obtained, it didn't open instances, but instead broke barriers. As soon as he used it, the system asked if he was sure, and of course he confirmed. A hole formed and the barrier disappeared. A rupture opened, but something felt strange. He had expected just the other city to be on the other side. He told the big idiot to come along and be careful. As soon as they stepped through, they found themselves in an odd space with a white room up ahead. He entered, saw that it was completely empty, and found that strange. Then the system announced that the two players had violated the city gate's rule and would be expelled. However, Lindsay said that if he was going to be expelled, he wanted it to be into Jinx City instead. He knew the upcoming events would take place there, and not having access would be a disaster. The system then stated that he would be expelled into the city, but he wouldn't be allowed to leave. At least he was relieved that he would be able to take advantage of the events. However, his expression quickly changed when he saw that the entire city was infected. With no other choice, the two began clearing out zombies and cleaning the streets. After a long time farming, they were exhausted, but the experience gained was excellent. Lindsay knew this was a huge city, but he hadn't expected the number of zombies to be so overwhelming. Then he heard a strange noise and immediately took off running, telling the big idiot to follow. They sprinted through the streets as yet another zombie horde approached from behind. Lindsay jumped into a sewer and landed inside, while the big idiot followed, but ended up falling like a complete fool. Lindsay sighed, saying that they would need to rest a lot before going back out again. Maybe getting thrown into a pile of zombies was the system's way of punishing him for breaking the barrier. One of the items he obtained from killing countless monsters was a wolf fang bracelet, which had a 10% chance to cause fear in surrounding creatures during battle. Another was a blood spirit ring that increased attributes the more monsters the wearer killed. He also found a clawed glove with embedded gems that could deal extra damage. But the most interesting was a small ring that created half a meter of extra storage space. He already had more than enough storage, but it would be useful for the big idiot to have his own inventory. The two rested there for a while, and after some time, they were back in the streets. As they walked, someone suddenly called out to the big idiot. When Lindsay turned around, a man seemed to recognize them and asked if they were also participating in the event. Lindsay simply nodded. The man, looking a bit embarrassed, asked if he could join them and lead the way. He tried talking to the big idiot, but Lindsay explained that if he didn't respond, that meant he agreed. The truth was they had slept through the announcement, so having someone guide them was actually useful. Then the blonde man pulled him aside, looked around cautiously, and whispered that this event would decide the future of Jing City. And just like that, the blonde guy changed outfits and even changed his hair color. Someone needs to send a message to these guys because they clearly aren't getting it. The guide explained that after a meeting between three families, the city's ranking system now determined a person's right to vote and speak. Lindsay remembered that in his past life, this was one of the first cities to successfully control the zombies. While other cities were in complete chaos, Jing City's military, government, and major families had come together to establish order. But of course, this didn't come for free. Lindsay knew that history was repeating itself here. The citizens would lose all their freedom, be humiliated, and used for everything in exchange for a little security. Man, this was some serious social commentary. Lindsay thanked the king of hair color changes for the information and, as a friend, offered to sell him some cards for 90 gold each. The guy seemed happy. It must have been a great deal. Since they cost 100 in the shop, selling them for 90 was charity. Right. Man, this kid had some interesting math. But fine, the guy handed over 270 gold coins and asked if he could take 3 cards. Lindsay agreed, and his first deal was made. When he turned around, a whole crowd had already gathered. A girl said she admired him and wanted to buy some things too. But Lindsay explained that he only made that offer to the hairstylist because he provided valuable information. Everyone looked devastated, realizing they wouldn't get anything. Lindsay was annoyed, but at the same time said that fine, he would sell to them for 95 gold each. The guy next to him wanted to protest that it wasn't fair, but everyone was already glaring. With that, Lindsay dropped the box on the ground and declared 95 each. No limits. Everyone hurried to hand over their gold, while the guy thought to himself that Lindsay was incredibly kind. Apparently, kindness was easy to achieve in this world. Meanwhile, Lindsay was excited because he would soon need to buy more honor medals, which would require a lot of money. After many successful deals, he walked calmly with a big idiot. A blonde guy with glasses remarked that Lindsay looked like he had a problem, but the other man replied confidently that the person next to him was ranked 5 in China, so there was nothing to worry about. Immediately, the blonde guy got greedy, saying that if it was the great idiot, they could just send 30 people to kill him and take his loot. Man, the guy pulled out an apple peeler and slashed at the other dude, demanding that Xiao Xu not disappoint him. He wanted to see how many idiots would follow the leopard fool straight into the trap. If you're confused about this sudden execution, so am I. But the guy was now staring at Lin Z, wondering who exactly this guy was for the big idiot to be following him. At that moment, someone came running up behind them. It was the hairstylist calling out to them. He asked if they were going out hunting tonight, since there were still many zombies that could appear suddenly. He grabbed Lindsay's clothes and told him it would be better if they left this area. But right at that moment, the other guys appeared behind them. Lindsay stretched lazily and told them to just get on with it. If they were planning to rob him, they shouldn't waste time. The hairstylist clung to Lindsay, while Lindsay calmly counted the number of enemies. He then smirked, impressed that they had 32 players who had already changed professions. The guy with glasses then warned Lindsay that he shouldn't have done business in these lands. Selling so many cards and resources clearly meant he was a leader from another city, but here he had to pay a tax. Lindsay didn't care at all. The bald guy made his offer. If Lindsay handed over half of everything he earned, they would pretend nothing happened. Otherwise, the enthusiastic guys behind him would have to take everything by force. But what they didn't expect was for Lindsay to draw his sword and ask what kind of nonsense was this about nothing happening. They had already wasted his time, so obviously, he would have to charge for that. The rusted dagger he summoned inflicted 200% more pain. At that moment, the big idiot entered berserker mode. He charged at the front lines, and the fool standing in front took a hammer straight to the face. Strangely, the guy clung onto the bald man like a cola and just hung there. Meanwhile, the other players rushed at Lindsay. From behind, Lindsay calmly stated that they shouldn't have wasted their lives like this. They had successfully changed professions, but in the end, they messed with the wrong person. The first guy took a pinch to the neck and collapsed instantly. An attack came from above, but Lindsay summoned his water ability, blocking all weapons. The bald guy was confused. How did this kid have so many abilities? And then Lindsay detonated the weapons, drenching everyone in the explosion. The guy looked terrified. All he wanted to know was if they still wanted to continue this fight. The bald guy refused to back down, yelling at his allies that they had to kill this kid before he took over the city. Face to face, Lindsay sighed, thinking this was going to be pathetic. He drew his sword and slashed forward. The shockwave cut through them like butter, and suddenly, Lindsay was standing behind a pile of bodies. Pieces of their remains hit the ground. Man, was it just me, or did the bald guy and the red-haired dude suddenly turn white-haired? Let's just say he got so scared that his hair turned white, and he ran for his life. But he should have run faster, because Lindsay hurled his sword like a boomerang and it struck him down. As far as I remember, the guy used to have a white beard, but now it's black. Now I'm starting to get curious about how many different color changes the artist will throw at us. At least our boy's hair was always white, while everyone else clung to his legs begging for forgiveness. Lindsay smiled and said, of course, no problem. All they had to do was pay a small fee. And by small fee, he meant emptying their entire inventories onto the ground. Meanwhile, the bald guy was slowly trying to slip away. Lindsay smirked and casually told him to come back. In less than a second, the guy was on his knees. After that, the group left crying. But if you thought Lindsay was merciful, you'd be dead wrong. He had already ordered the big idiot to finish them all off. The bald guy sensed something coming, but too late. The ground was painted red. Everyone was now taking their famous eternal nap. Sometime later, other players arrived and saw the carnage. Apparently, they were thanking the gods that this bastard was finally dead, since he had been robbing everyone in the city. Meanwhile, on top of a building, a mysterious guy in full squad mode watched the city of Jing. He pulled out a pistol, fired a shot into the air, and a firework exploded in the sky. Lindsay saw it and muttered that he had apparently attracted attention from the wrong people. Meanwhile, in the safe zone of Jing City, a man tried to enter, but before that, a soldier stopped him for inspection. The place was bustling with activity, and Lindsay was impressed that they had built all this in just a month. The problem was that to enter, you had to reveal your identity. Obviously, that was prohibited for both him and the big idiot. But he knew that something built in just a month couldn't have perfect security. It wouldn't be long before he found a loophole. An hour later, at an isolated section marked with caution tape, he turned to the big idiot. This is where we're going in. Both of them put on masks, entered the area, and shut the door behind them. Lindsay then told the big idiot to find a map of Jing City. Man, that wasn't even a challenge. The map was right there. Our boy quickly noticed that the individual combat tournament would be held in the gymnasium, so he decided to check it out. As he walked through the streets, he overheard some guys talking about who the strongest person in the city was. The green-haired guy, who would probably change hair color soon, confidently said it was General Zhang Yuanzhang. But the other guy replied that he had heard the general was sick. Lindsay remembered that in his past life, this guy was ranked 1 but still ended up in 3rd place. The friends kept arguing and wanted to place bets. The green-haired guy said he would bet 500 coins on the general. Right then, Lindsay appeared, saying how much he loved the world of gambling. The guy explained the location of the betting house, saying it was controlled by the 3 major families. Lindsay thanked him and rushed off with the big idiot. The scene changed as they arrived at the banking district. Man, he was impressed that the city was still fully intact. With 3 hours left before the championship started, Lindsay decided to place a bet. They went to the betting area, and as usual, the big idiot walked ahead, causing everyone to clear the way. The bookkeeper asked which tickets he wanted to buy. Lindsay asked how many people had bet on General Zhang Yuanzhang. The guy explained that a lot of people had placed bets on him. Lindsay immediately understood why the general had ended up in third place in the past. The guy then asked what Lindsay wanted to bet on. Lindsay grinned and bet that the general would finish in third place. The bookkeeper looked confused and seemed hesitant to accept the bet. But before he could refuse, Lindsay slammed his sack of gold onto the counter. He announced that he was putting 20,000 gold coins on that result. People whispered that if he was right, he'd win 60,000 gold. But did the betting house even have that much money? His girlfriend, however, was certain that the general was the strongest, so in her opinion, Lindsay was wasting 20,000 gold. Using a bit of persuasion, Lindsay convinced the big idiot to bet 20,000 as well. The bookkeeper was shaking, asking if they were sure about wagering 40,000 on third place. Lindsay just told him to hurry up since the tournament was about to start. Sensing the threat, the bookkeeper immediately processed the bet, and with that, he handed over 2 betting tickets. The scene shifted to the gymnasium, where the arenas were already set up. The moment Lindsay stepped inside, the system automatically charged him 10 gold. The automatic payment system. He noticed 2 lines, one for spectators and one for participants. And since security was laughable, he casually walked into the participants' line. Apparently, anyone over level 10 could compete. Once inside, there were many confident players getting ready. And there he was, the famous General Zhang Yuanzhang, standing tall, dripping in swag with his cape flowing dramatically. The signal was given, and the official tournament of Jing City began. The competition had a preliminary stage and a final stage. In the preliminaries, 32 players would be selected out of the 1,546 present. Numerous arenas were spread across the field, where players could either defend or attack. If you defended an arena for 5 minutes, you won. If someone took your place, you lost. All you had to do was stand your ground and hold off every attacker. Of course, the person in the arena was responsible for their own survival. At any moment, they could choose to forfeit. With his hands still in his pockets, Lindsay casually observed the battlefield. This was going to be an absolute bloodbath. As soon as the match started, players rushed in desperation to claim the first available arenas. While our boy moved at his own pace, he knew that in the end, all that mattered was standing on the platform when the time was up. The competition began, and Lindsay casually pulled out a card and sat down next to the big idiot. They watched the battle board, which showed the numbered arenas. Those marked in red already had fights happening. He was impressed at how quickly everyone had jumped into action. As expected, the general stood on his platform, sword in hand, while no one dared to attack him. Meanwhile, Shi Jing, the blonde guy from before in armor, was surrounded by girls, all begging him to teach them some moves. Lindsay recognized the name. Shi Jing was from the Li family, known as the God of War. He hadn't expected to meet someone like this so soon, so his efforts had already paid off. Then an NPC tier guy jumped at the general, declaring that even if no one believed in him, he would be the first to challenge him. With that, the battle began and all the other players started cheering, until the guy took a single sword strike from the general and immediately surrendered. The crowd erupted, chanting Zhang Yuanzhang's name, and more arenas started getting attacked. Then hooded figures appeared. Lindsay instantly recognized them. They were the Lei family's death squad. A sudden pain in his chest made him remember something. A battle broke out between Mountain Leopard, who stood arms crossed, and the guy in green called 64. Yes, that was actually his name. Lindsay had been watching everyone closely and knew that 64 was far superior to Mountain Leopard. But then, bam! Mountain Leopard landed a clean punch to 64's face, sending him flying. Even so, Lindsay trusted that 64 would win. Mountain Leopard's attacks were way too obvious. 64 wiped his nose, then pulled out a hidden weapon from his back, without Mountain Leopard noticing. He pretended to throw another punch, and the moment Mountain Leopard dodged, he took a hit straight to the ribs. Mountain Leopard managed to push him away with a kick to the chest, but now the fight was turning against him. The next second, Mountain Leopard was already behind 64, ready to punch him again. But man 64 moved like rubber, twisting midair and landing a spinning counterstrike. Then he kicked Mountain Leopard like a trash bag, sending him flying out of the arena. The crowd was stunned by the performance and realized that the tournament was far more dangerous than expected. Most of the arenas were being taken over by the Li family. The spectators were furious and started throwing objects in protest. Some soldiers whispered, wondering if the Li family was finally showing its true colors. Soon, the old man muttered that he had always said the Li family needed to be destroyed, but everyone had insisted on peace. Himu, the young warrior, listened as Su declared that they would start a war against the 3 families, since they were clearly ignoring all orders. Someone slammed a chair on the floor. It was that white-haired kid, declaring that the Li family was crossing the line. But the Li family leader smirked, saying that this was the perfect opportunity to wipe out the other factions. Meanwhile, in the arena, 64 apologized. He had accidentally killed his opponent. In another arena, the dead guy's friend was boiling with rage. Shi Jing stepped in, telling him not to be sad, because he would be his next opponent. The big idiot was itching to join the fight, but his father told him to wait. They needed patience. It was crucial to observe everyone's moves before making a move themselves. Only one fight remained in Arena 18, and once it ended, their turn would come. The crowd whispered that mountain leopards stood no chance against Shi Jing, but Lin Zi muttered that these people weren't paying attention to details. In the arena, the man who lost his ally charged at Shi Jing, who readied his hammer for a meteor strike. The impact smashed into the ground, sending a shockwave that knocked his opponent back. The guy was still recovering when Shi Jing lunged forward, declaring him too weak. But just as the attack landed, the guy disappeared like smoke. He reappeared behind Shi Jing and managed to land a sword strike. Unfortunately, he hit the armor. Genius. He was stunned that Shi Jing was unharmed, but he could have just gone for the head. Now he was sent flying with a hammer to the chest, crashing like a broken toy. Shi Jing approached his fallen opponent without mercy. At that moment, Zhang Yuanzhang told the guy to surrender before it was too late. The boy on the ground sighed and admitted defeat. Instantly, he was teleported out before he could be killed. Then Shi Jing turned to the crowd and asked if there was any other idiot willing to challenge him. And that's when the greatest idiot of them all stepped up. Out of nowhere, a masked figure appeared right in front of him. Nobody knew who the masked man was. Everyone wondered why some random player was volunteering to die at Shi Jing's hands. Lin Zi summoned his weapon while Shi Jing smirked. Looks like you want to know what it feels like to be crushed by my hammer. Bo and Lin Zi locked eyes with him for a single second. Shi Jing froze. He saw something terrifying standing behind Lin Zi. His body instinctively trembled, and he started backing away without realizing it. Before the first attack even landed, he was already at the edge of the arena. One more step and he'd be disqualified. With no other choice, he forced himself to attack, even though his entire body screamed at him not to. He activated his Crimson Smash technique and the attack hit directly. But Lin Zi stopped it effortlessly with his sword. A single slash to the side and the hammer was sent flying out of Shi Jing's hand. The guy rushed forward for a punch, yelling that Lin Zi was begging to die. But then, something felt off. Before he could process it, his body was in pieces, sliced apart like sashimi. The crowd erupted in terror, screaming, demanding to know who had just killed the third strongest fighter in the city in an instant. One person stood up and shouted that they needed to check this player's status immediately. Lin Zi had already removed his mask, set his player name to visible, and declared that he was here for revenge. He knew that his identity as Jie Yi would soon be exposed anyway, so he no longer cared. And then he made it clear. He had come to Jing City today to take revenge on the Li family. Nearby, Zhu from the military watched everything unfold. He was pleased. At least now, they had a chance to stop this disgusting family. And now that everyone knew Jie Yi was participating, the other players wanted nothing to do with it. They were all fans of his, especially after he had sold them so many items. Back in the Li family's war room, a man bit his nails and muttered that they had gone too far. They hadn't just involved the Li family, they had also provoked the military, which would only make things worse for the three families. The head of the faction that had sent Shi Jing argued that at least the threat was gone now. But he couldn't believe that Shi Jing was actually dead. The worst part, they were now officially at war with the military. He revealed that they had soldiers positioned all around the stadium. As soon as the preliminaries ended, they would invade and cause absolute chaos. The young heir sat back and said that this was their last chance. Because if they didn't fix this now, they were screwed no matter what. The man in glasses warned that their family had better not disappoint them again. Back in the arena, Lin Zi had stolen the giant hammer Shi Jing had been using. Since it had belonged to one of the strongest fighters in the city, it was high quality and had the ability to restore health with each hit. Perfect for the big idiot. He also picked up a bracelet that slightly boosted his spirit attribute. Then he summoned a chair and sat down casually, knowing no one would dare challenge him now. Looking to the side, he watched Zhang Yuan's match. His opponent was the second in command of the Li family, one of the strongest fighters in the city, and he had the talent of summoning beasts. Lin Zi knew this wasn't going to be an easy fight. What he didn't understand was why the Li family was going all in on this tournament. Just then, the enemy summoned a tiger from a portal, right as Anhuan moved in for an attack. He pulled a sword from his back, deflected the strike, and was knocked backward. At the same time, the tiger lunged from behind. It bit down hard on his shoulder, but Zhang Yuan managed to throw it off. However, his opponent was relentless, using a smoke technique right in Zhang Yuan's face. His vision was blocked for a second, and in the next moment, the enemy appeared behind him and finished him off. The body hit the ground like garbage, and the man even kicked it for good measure. Some players sighed, saying it was a shame that they could only kill him once. Lin Zi had thought it was Zhang Yuan's arena, but it was actually just a soldier's. He realized this because Zhang Yuan was in the distance, punching a wall in rage. He swore vengeance against the Li family, and then the big idiot stepped into Zhang Yuan's arena. The opponent glanced over, unimpressed. Is this the best that got to kill me? He summoned a bear and declared that he was about to take another life. At that moment, Lin Zi used his mind control ability to coordinate the big idiot's movements. The bear swiped, launching him into the air. The enemy mocked him, saying his side was too weak. As the big idiot landed, he was immediately surrounded by two monsters from both sides. He ordered the wolf to wait, but the beast charged in any way. So the big idiot pretended to back away, only to suddenly launch into a b-boy spin kick, knocking the wolf's jaw sideways and sending it flying. Then he hit the bear with another spinning kick, making it explode on impact. At that moment, the opponent realized something. The big idiot had been holding back his true strength. He tried to surrender, but before he could finish saying it, the big idiot came flying in and kicked him square in the chest. He crashed to the ground, rushed to the system menu to forfeit, but his hand was pinned down by the hammer, and then his head rolled across the floor. Lindsay canceled the mind control and the big idiot stood proudly grinning. The crowd erupted in cheers, thrilled that someone was finally standing up to the Lee family. Meanwhile, Lindsay was celebrating on the side. His only goal was to make the Lee family's life a nightmare in Jing City, but honestly, he barely even needed to try. They had already pissed off the military, which was a terrible idea. He continued watching as more fights unfolded. A stab here, a slash there. Two girls struggling to even lift their swords. A bit sexist, if you ask me. And with that, the qualifiers finally came to an end. The players who lost side in relief fall for Lindsay had been kind of boring. In the end, 14 soldiers, 10 random people from the noble families, some members of secret organizations, Lindsay, and the big idiot all made it through. Right now, the big idiot was more excited than ever. He wanted his new hammer. Lindsay pulled it from his inventory and handed it over. The big idiot beamed with joy. Just then, the system issued a message. Each player who advanced was to head to their designated information booths. When Lindsay entered the information booth, he found an orb inside. The moment he placed his hand on it, the system recognized his qualification. At the same time, his personal system offered him a special mission. If he won first place, he would receive exclusive rewards. Obviously, he accepted. Outside, Zhang Yuan Chong approached him. He tried to introduce himself, but Lindsay cut him off immediately, saying he already knew who he was. He told him to get straight to the point because he didn't have time to waste. Man, our boy was as direct as ever. Zhang Yuan explained that the city was struggling with the apocalypse and countless problems, and that he wanted to recruit Lindsay. But Lindsay wasn't interested in the slightest. He simply said that if Zhang had nothing valuable to offer, he should leave. Zhang sighed, accepting the rejection, and instead asked Lindsay to meet with General Hui. Finally, this was what Lindsay wanted. However, Zhang warned that the military was planning a move against the three families. They went to a private area, away from players, and locked the door. Zhang explained that even before the apocalypse, the three families had bought off countless government officials. This made it extremely difficult to act against them because taking them down would shake the entire power structure. But after the apocalypse, countless officials had turned into zombies, removing many of those obstacles. Unlike the government, which was actually trying to save Jing City, the three families were fighting over power and wealth. That's why Zhang needed Lindsay's help, especially since he had declared in the arena that he was seeking revenge against the Li family. But Lindsay laughed. He said that if they continued working like this, it would take forever. Zhang was confused. Lindsay told him he could see that Zhang had good intentions, but what mattered was, what would he get for taking down the entire Li family alone? And much faster than Zhang could even imagine. Zhang stared at him, unsure whether to believe it. But Lindsay simply smirked, telling him to make a good offer quickly because this was his only chance. Then he turned and left, calling for the big idiot. Outside, dozens of people were running in a panic. They were yelling that the southwestern barriers had collapsed and hordes of zombies were invading. Apparently, anyone who helped defend the area would receive a 50% commission bonus in gold. Everyone was rushing off in a frenzy. But Lindsay immediately knew something was off. He grabbed one of the players by the shoulder, making him flinch. The guy yelled at him to let go, but the moment he saw who it was, he froze in fear. Lindsay asked what was going on, and the general appeared, demanding an explanation. The player quickly explained that as soon as the barriers fell, the Li family called for help to block the invasion. But before anyone could understand what was really happening, the whole thing had turned into a disaster, and everyone ran away. Lindsay asked who had provided the intel, but the guy replied that everything was chaotic, just as Lindsay had expected. The Li family had deliberately released monsters into the city to distract everyone. Clearly, they had picked a fight with the military and were using the chaos as a cover to escape. He immediately called for the general, telling him that the entire Li family had probably already fooled. Zhang looked confused, but Lindsay said there was no time to explain. They had to start hunting those bastards before they got too far away. Zhang agreed, saying he would mobilize the military, but Lindsay should stay back since it was too dangerous. Then Zhang rushed off with the army. Meanwhile, Lindsay decided that it was time to enjoy the chaos. Around the city, people were excitedly talking about the amazing battle they had just witnessed. They spoke about a masked swordsman who had cut down an opponent in an instant. But one guy, hands stuffed in his pockets, scoffed that they must be crazy. Then he pointed behind them. The exact two people they were talking about were walking toward them. His friend nearly jumped in fear, because it was really them. Immediately, they lowered their heads and stepped aside, letting Lindsay pass freely. Once he was gone, they breathed a sigh of relief, grateful they didn't die on the spot. A little while later, Lindsay and the big idiot arrived at a massive building. Inside, everyone was waiting for him. The two of them walked through the crowd, and the big idiot looked around, confused. The place was packed with players. likely because it was the city's marketplace. Lindsay entered one of the shopping capsules and countless items appeared before him. The problem was that he quickly noticed that everything here was way more expensive than in most city. But for someone who had sold a ton of stuff earlier, the high prices didn't matter. So he kept shopping until nightfall. By 10 p.m., he called the big idiot over and said it was time to grab some fried chicken. While walking through the streets, they passed by some soldiers. The soldiers warned them to head home immediately since no one was allowed outside after 10 p.m. Lindsay turned around. The soldier recognized him and went pale. He immediately backtracked, saying, "Actually, forget I said anything." His companion muttered that they had almost gotten themselves killed. Lindsay simply left the scene. The perspective shifted to the Yin family's mansion. Inside, the white-haired youth was raging, smashing furniture with lightning. He yelled that Lai Exua had completely ruined their plans. He demanded to know why the idiots who had made deals with that bastard had suddenly gone silent. Grabbing one of them by the collar, he snarled, "How are we supposed to deal with the military now that they're all breathing down our necks?" At that moment, a woman entered. She reported that a certain player from the tournament had come to visit him. He raised an eyebrow. It was strange, but he decided to hear them out. After all, that player wanted revenge on the Li family, not on him. However, the woman informed him that the boy had sent a message asking whether he planned to keep the Yin family standing. With no other choice, and Jaiming agreed to meet with Lindsay to find out what he wanted. Now with his feet casually propped up on the table, this was Jaiming, the head of the Yin family. Lindsay entered the room and sat down, commenting that Jaiming seemed quite cautious. But Jaiming cut to the chase, saying that he had always opposed the Li family's plans, so why had Lindsay come to see him? Lindsay answered that he had nothing against Jaiming's family, but both of them had a common enemy, the Li family. Jaiming made it clear that he wasn't willing to start a war against them. But Lindsay smirked, saying that he was misunderstanding the situation. He wasn't here to talk about war. He was here to talk about someone working in the Yin family's beekeeping operations, a man named Pan Gaoqi. Jaiming's expression darkened. He immediately assumed that Lindsay was suggesting Gaoqi was a Li family spy. But that was impossible. He firmly denied it, stating that Lindsay knew nothing about the foundation of the three families. But Lindsay laughed. He said that he knew very well that they raised children from a young age, trained them as assassins, and used them to seize control of the city. Even worse, most people tied to the three families were cursed, meaning they could be killed at any moment without even realizing it. Jaiming slammed the table. That makes no sense. But Lindsay told him to place his hand near his belly button and tap his chest 3 times. Jaiming hesitated but did as instructed. The next moment, he coughed up blood. Horrified, he demanded to know what had just happened. Lindsay calmly asked if he had been learning techniques passed down by the Li family, but Jaiming kept denying it, insisting that these techniques had been taught in his family for hundreds of years. Lindsay sighed, realizing that convincing him wouldn't be easy. But in his past life, Jaiming only broke free from the curse after reaching an extremely high level in the apocalypse. By then, it was too late. The Li family had already stolen everything from him. Even worse, they had taken his wife and child hostage. This time, he wouldn't let such talent go to waste. With no other options, Jaiming gritted his teeth and asked, "How do I break this curse? How much time do I have left?" Lindsay smiled. That depended entirely on how quickly he could steal the antidote from the Li family. Jaiming nodded grimly, saying he would handle it as soon as possible. But Lindsay, ever the gossip, leaned forward and said, "I know about another infiltrator." Jaiming's eyes narrowed. "Who?" Lindsay placed a document on the table. It was a full list of every single Li family spy. However, there was a catch. The price for that piece of paper was 200,000 gold coins. Jaiming's face darkened as he slammed the table again. "At this point, you might as well rob me." Lindsay just grinned and told him to make a counteroffer. After a long pause, Jaiming reluctantly said that 80,000 was the most he could afford. Lindsay chuckled. It was always fun negotiating with desperate people, but even so, he refused the offer. He told Jaiming that 80,000 was just the amount he would lose when everything started falling apart. And then the scene changed. Now he was a normal-looking man in a suit with brown hair. Lindsay was back in his room, holding a fire scroll in his hands. It contained a technique for a flame-powered flying carpet. Since he had control over fire, he could use it effortlessly. The next morning, he was completely exhausted from practicing all night. One of the new techniques he had learned allowed him to wrap his weapon in flames. He activated the ability immediately, slicing through the air, and was impressed at how easy it was. Then he aimed at the table. The moment his blade touched it, the entire thing melted like lava. Satisfied, he called over the big idiot. Now the preparations for the final match were complete. In front of the stadium, everyone was making their bets on who would win. Then a message instructed all the finalists to enter the booth immediately and get ready. At that moment, Zhang Yuan called out to our boy and said he had already spoken with the leader about the request he made. To discuss this further, they wanted to have a chat with our boy after the tournament. Our boy thanked him and said it was fine while thinking that this was the perfect chance to extort these officials. He then walked up to an orb and placed his hands on it. The tournament rules were quite complex. The winner moved on, and the loser was eliminated. Our boy then appeared in the room and the voice announced that the competition was about to begin and that the first opponents were being selected. The first person our boy would face was at number 013. He pressed the sand and then he was teleported. He appeared there and the guy was emerging in front of him. Before even seeing who his opponent was, he was already talking about how his dagger was coated in venom. However, as soon as he saw that it was our boy, he immediately dropped to his knees and apologized, saying he wasn't going to face that. With that, our boy advanced and earned 2 points. People were impressed, saying the man surrendered in 0.1 seconds, which was almost a record. Meanwhile, there was a completely unsuspicious bald guy who seemed very interested in our boy. Some time passed and a mushroom had already grown on his head, since no one wanted to face the kid. He decided to pay attention to the other fights as it was the only entertaining thing to do. Was it Zhang Yuan against the big idiot man? Our boy decided to check the general's stats and saw that he had numerous cutting and explosive skills. He rushed forward to strike the big idiot, his blade imbued with flames, but the brute defended himself with a hammer. He tried to strike from above, but the general was faster, sending out a shockwave that forced him to retreat again. The general was impressed that this subordinate of the kid was as strong as he was. However, he couldn't afford to lose this at all, or his prestige in the army would go down the drain. Meanwhile, the big idiot was receiving messages from Lin Lu, warning him that if he didn't defeat Zhang Yuan, he wouldn't get any chicken pieces for a while. Of course, he immediately activated Berserker and charged forward to strike the general again. Man, are you really going to try to block that hammer blow with a sword? It was impressive that he managed to slide and make the attack miss. At the same time, he activated an army blessing that granted him a 20% damage reduction. He charged at the big idiot again, but this time even faster. He was aiming for the back while staying protected, but the brute managed to counterattack in reverse, sending him crashing backward and being dragged along. Blood was already coming out of his mouth and he realized this guy was way tougher than he had imagined. He would have to use his trump card, so the war general appeared, and in the next second, he transformed. Not only that, but he also summoned an army. Man, I have to admit, this general has some real swag. And Lindsay was excited because he remembered that in his past life, this guy used the army release technique to kill a level 80 zombie. This was an early form of that great technique, but it was still incredibly powerful. The big idiot let out a roar, got ready, and leaped toward the general. This time, he prepared a triple slash and clashed head-on with the damn guy who was diving in. A golden explosion erupted in the middle of the arena, blinding everyone on the stage, and the whole place was destroyed. The general was lying on the ground, exhausted, but right in front of him, the beloved big idiot was also down. However, the guy was a big zombie, and despite bleeding more than a swimming pool, he managed to stand up. He stared at the general, who struggled but wasn't doing too well. Strangely enough, he smiled, and the big idiot smiled back. They stood there, facing off, while everyone was praising them, saying they finally got to see a decent fight. Lindsay was also impressed by both of their performances. He had no idea who would win, and I don't really know who won or lost, but we're back in the room. The general was going to be healed, but he ordered them to take care of the big idiot first. However, our boy said it wasn't necessary because he had already given him some medicine. The guy responded that it was fine then, but if anything was needed, just let him know. Obviously, Lindsay didn't want any doctor to get near the monster or they would find out he was a zombie. With that, I think the competition was over. The messages announced that the number 1 rank would receive a gold item and number 2, the big idiot, would receive a silver item. Considering that even the general's strongest subordinate got beaten up by the big idiot, he really didn't stand a chance against our boy. In the audience, people were commenting that they never expected the general to end up in 3rd place. Not to mention that the only person with gold equipment just got another piece. Near the arena, there was someone completely unsuspicious watching the situation. I think it was that boy from the Lee family, punching the wall in frustration, saying it was all that damn guy's fault. People saw him as he left the arena before anyone could recognize him. Everyone was celebrating, and our boy was calmly eating. And yeah, that was it. The system announced that he won and received the Golden Blink boots. I don't know why I thought there was going to be a big competition, considering our boy has always been way more OP than everyone else. These boots had spatial abilities, so it made sense they were given as a championship prize. Equipping them, some of our boy's stats were already surpassing 100. And obviously, since he won, he also got the mission reward that the system had assigned. When he opened it, he received the silver rank Shadow Demon gloves. Lindsay noted that these were part of the set he was already wearing, so it was peculiar that the system had given him exactly that piece. But now, with the full set combined, the effect was increased by 15%, which was useful as well. Meanwhile, the big idiot was happily eating his chicken thigh when our boy told him to hurry up and open the system. The guy looked all confused and scared, and then our boy saw it. For 2nd place, he got a pretty mediocre silver armor, and he immediately realized that the reward was garbage. The big guy, however, was sad that his chicken pieces had fallen. Our boy just called out to him, saying they had more important things to take care of. Obviously, collecting the bet reward, because that was a ton of money. Outside, some people looked a bit uneasy. A soldier came running. wanting to talk to our boy. Apparently, an emergency meeting was taking place and our boy was summoned there. He wanted to know what happened, and the guy explained that while the tournament was happening, the Lee family had pulled some dirty trick. Who would have thought? They lured a bunch of zombies to the area and dumped them inside the city. Since the strongest people were at the arena, the army tried to defend it, but over 1,000 soldiers died. However, Lindsay knew that no matter how powerful the Lee family was, they wouldn't have been able to attract thousands of zombies that fast. He then declared that he would be part of this emergency meeting, and in the next scene, we were in the conference room. General Xu slammed the table and said that this was no longer up for discussion. The Lee family had clearly revealed their true colors. Himu asked everyone to calm down, saying they needed to discuss how to deal with this. Another guy wearing a hat said that this wasn't the time to punish the Lee family because they needed to focus on rebuilding the city. Some guys in suits on the side agreed. They claimed that the Lee family's reputation couldn't be damaged or public opinion on the three-faction alliance would shift. Everyone was trying to convince the old man that it was too risky to go against them at this moment. Then Zhang slammed the table and said it was ridiculous to believe they could complete the safe zone while the Lee family was sabotaging everything. What he really wanted to know was how much each of them was getting paid to keep defending the Lee family like this. Himu urged everyone to calm down, claiming that their loyalty was to the city. Meanwhile, the guys from the other family agreed, saying they had to look at the bigger picture and that this whole situation was too risky. Then someone spoke up, agreeing with General Zhang. Looking toward the door, who was it arriving? Our masked boy. However, Himu immediately ordered him to be removed, saying it wasn't right for a player like him to be part of this meeting. To which the old man beside him responded that he was the one who ranked first in the championship, so his opinion mattered. Even so, Himu argued that confidential information couldn't be shared with people like him and ordered a soldier to remove him. Then General Zhang stated that he was the one who invited the boy and asked if anyone had a problem with that. Himu insisted that bringing in someone they didn't know was too risky. At that, Lindsay said that while Himu might not know who he was, he himself knew very well who Himu was. A man who had lost his wife and daughter, who had turned into zombies, yet still continued fighting in the army. Through sheer effort, he had reached his current position. But our boy wanted to know if he had ever heard of someone named Lin Kaiyi. Himu seemed startled, glancing toward the members of the Lee family. And our boy revealed that he knew the Lee family had told Himu that this person was his son and that he was still alive. Since then, Himu had been obeying the Lee family's orders to protect this person. The general stood up, asking Himu if this was true. Just then, a message appeared, notifying all players that a zombie invasion would begin in 5 hours. But judging by the size of the message, it was clearly going to be a massive horde. Himu started trembling, asking if this was even possible. Then he began laughing like a madman, saying that the Lee family still had a few tricks up their sleeve. He then declared that he was certain this place wouldn't hold, and that meant everyone there was going to die. Kaiwei slapped him across the face, calling him a complete animal. However, Himu simply said he was tired of serving old men like them and was looking forward to watching them all be sacrificed. But Lindsay found this strange. This kind of horde invasion was supposed to happen much later in the game. The message then explained that for an invasion of this scale to occur, 3 conditions had to be met. First, the location needed to have a secure base. Second, there had to be a massive accumulation of zombies in nearby areas. And finally, a creature capable of controlling the entire horde had to be born. Our boy still found this strange since the base was only half built. Any horde invading this place would have an easy time destroying everything. He put his hand on his face, saying that another tough fight was coming. Then he grabbed Himu by the collar and said that since he had exposed this informant, he was taking him. Zhang said that was fine as long as he ensured Himu had a miserable death. Our boy thanked him and said that if they had any questions, they could just ask him. With that, he walked out the door, saying they had a lot to take care of. Outside, he placed Himu on the ground as some soldiers passed by. The army guys were commenting that he was being carried like a chicken and wondering if Jira had really gotten that strong. Himu had a look on his face that was usually reserved for female characters looking at the protagonist, but the treatment he got was a chokehold followed by a face-first slam into the ground. Himu said they should just kill him already. He didn't care since everyone there was going to die when the horde arrived anyway. Hearing that, people realized that the bastard was a traitor. At that moment, Lindsay pulled out a scroll and cast a soundproof barrier skill so that no one could hear anything. The orb activated, and the big idiot stood guard to prevent anyone from entering. Himu kept saying that there was no way to escape. Since the city was sealed, everyone would die there. Our boy just punched him in the face and teeth scattered on the ground. Then he asked where the head of the Lee family, Lai Lixuan, was hiding. Of course, Himu refused to answer, to which our boy replied that he loved a more challenging kind of love. He got closer and asked if he would talk now. The guy said no, so he got a pinch on his hand. As he kept pinching, our boy said he was excited to hear everything Himu had received from the Lee family. At that, the guy was already begging to be killed. This one was easy. But our boy simply said that as long as he didn't have the information, he would stay alive. He paused the torture for a moment and then asked if Himu was tired of pretending. Before the guy could answer, he struck his other hand. This time, He wanted to know what orders Lai Lixuan had given him. He explained that he smuggled resources and sometimes sent military personnel to places where they would be killed. Once again, our boy wanted to know what Lai Lixuan told him before fleeing yesterday. Himu replied that all they asked was to delay any actions against the Li family for as long as possible. Lindsay then wanted to know a meeting point or how they communicated. Himu mentioned a place called Chamardent and said the Li family managed it. Our boy asked if he had any more information and Himu said no. At that moment, Himu was thinking that now the boy would want to keep him alive to torture him later. But when the chaos started, he would find a way to escape. However, Lindsay wasn't going to give him that chance. He finished him off with a clean neck strike, kicked him aside, and even summoned an umbrella. The guy was definitely gone, even leaving an eye rolling on the ground. Then the scene shifted to the betting house where our boy went to collect everything he had wagered. The warden looked at the records and said he had correctly predicted that the general would come in third. According to the calculations, he would receive 123,000 gold coins. It was surprisingly simple. She just checked the system, and the money was deposited into his account. With that, he left, now extremely rich. Sometime later, he and the big idiot were at Jing's shops. While our boy was shopping, the monster glutton was devouring his chicken. Our boy managed to buy the city's token for 225,000 gold coins. Man, that thing was expensive. The people outside were all shocked, wondering who this billionaire with so many coins was. The next moment, our boy stepped out of the shop, and they were all in awe. Looking at his hand, he had finally gotten what he wanted, the city honor emblem, which granted several advantages. Once every 2 days, he could make an announcement that everyone would hear. He could also cause fear, pain, and any kind of negative status effect much more easily when fighting in that area. Additionally, the chances of obtaining items from monsters in this city were increased. Anyone who attacked him would lose attributes for 5 minutes, and he could also summon a divine creature from Jing in any battle. As he left, he seemed a bit dissatisfied, thinking that for 225,000 coins, there should have been more perks. At least he could summon the city's legendary dragon. The only problem was that it lasted only 2 minutes. Now it was time to spend more money and buy a new set for the big idiot. The lunatic had formed the perfect duo. They were now dressed exactly alike. Meanwhile, back in the meeting room, someone called for General Asura. Zhang asked about the situation, and the soldier explained the barrier surrounding the city. Not even war tanks could break through it, so there was no way to escape. On top of that, not a single zombie had appeared yet, so they had no idea what the intensity of the attack would be. One of them was grateful that they had a lot of people from the championship, but another pointed out that the Li family had still killed a lot of the army's soldiers. Zhang analyzed the situation and concluded that, at best, they could defend only 2 directions. Someone asked if they would have to gamble on where the zombies would come from, and Zhang said yes. The soldier then said they would have to position themselves in the 2 locations where the zombies were most likely to arrive. The problem was that if the horde came from somewhere else, they would have to move all the troops, and by then, it might be too late. The blue-haired guy noted that if they didn't have defensive structures to help, the city could be wiped out. Xu, however, replied that they had no other choice, so they needed to decide quickly which directions to defend. They commented that Zhang had a combat experience, so they would listen to the boy. They decided to defend the east and the west. The walls in the western zone were still incomplete, and in the east, the Li family had destroyed everything. The zombies would naturally take advantage of the weakest spots. It seemed like the general simply agreed, and the 2 left the room. Meanwhile, our boy, drawn with great effort, was lying on the bed looking at the system. He could easily escape these creatures and leave the city. The problem was that if everyone died, there would be major consequences. He then grabbed the megaphone, typed something, and sent it. I have no idea what it was apparently. It was a secret. Actually, no, it wasn't, because the message popped up for us to see. He cursed out the Li family and warned everyone that they were the traitors responsible for the invasion. Meanwhile, at the Li family's estate, their guy was already furious with our boy, and he hadn't even received the announcement yet. He was muttering that if he ever got the chance, he would tear that bastard apart. Then the butler entered and informed him that something terrible had happened. He asked what it was, and the man explained that an announcement had been made revealing that the Li family were the traitors responsible for the zombie invasion. Because of this, everyone who had been supporting the Li family was now distancing themselves, and they were losing a huge chunk of their manpower. He asked if the people in their secret operation were also abandoning them, and the old man confirmed that they were. No one wanted to support them anymore. That announcement had ruined all their chances of recovering, and Jing City had become an unstable place. The patriarch nearly fainted, and the old man tried to hold him up. One of the guys tried to help, saying the poor man had passed out from sheer rage. At 8:30 on the eastern side, the military was beginning their preparations. Nuno asked if everyone was already there, and the officer responded that they currently had 50,000 soldiers. 20,000 were military personnel, 15,000 were from the city's noble families, and another 15,000 came from smaller organizations. There were an additional 100,000 in the rear who could assist, but they were completely unprepared. If the creatures managed to reach them, it would likely be the end. The general closed his eyes and then said it was fine. As long as they ensured the creatures didn't break through, there was nothing to fear. After all, there was no turning back now. The North and South would have minimal troops, just enough to hold back the creatures while they repositioned forces. All they could do was pray that the attack hit the regions where they were most prepared. The system then announced that the invasion would begin soon and last for 5 hours. The general looked toward the city, and over in the Kyoto building, everyone was gathered around a blue crystal. A message about merit points appeared in everyone's minds. Apparently, players had realized that the crystal was something important that needed to be defended. The general ordered the strongest players to be stationed there while the army focused on holding the front line. Someone then asked if they should call the big idiot and our boy. Zhang, however, knew that those two couldn't be controlled, so there was no point in giving them orders. He just told the officer to go quickly and relay the other information. Meanwhile, our boy was in his room mastering the water element. He had learned a vortex skill that seemed to pull creatures into the center, making it perfect for dealing with hordes. The system then announced that since the region was about to be attacked, a mission was being issued. Because the zombie force was far stronger than the city, if he survived along with the city and ranked at the top, he would receive a golden item and 2 cheats. Lindsay was shocked that even the system was saying the city's forces were weak. Clearly, whatever was coming wasn't going to be easy. He immediately grabbed the big idiot and told him to stop eating because they had a lot of work to do. With that, they left the building, headed for the streets, and the system announced that the attack was about to begin. A danger message appeared for our boy, and in front of him, a red orb began expanding. From within it, a massive crowd of zombies emerged out of nowhere. The creatures advanced toward the city, and strangely, they all had little cistern windows floating above their heads. From a distance, it was clear that the horde was nearly endless as they started rushing forward. The general raised his arms, ordering everyone to prepare and charge. A massive golden star struck the middle of the zombies. Spikes of ice shot up, killing many, and giant slimes were summoned to contain them while the general ordered the army to keep advancing. I thought the army would be using guns, but apparently they had magic as well. Too bad there were always the unfortunate ones with no talent who had to fight zombies head-on just to die. From afar, John watched the carnage. Then an officer reported that for now, they were successfully holding the line. The general ordered the 3rd defense line to pull back and rest, then sent in the 2nd line. Just as someone reported that a horde of 7,000 zombies had appeared in the northern region and reinforcements were needed. This was exactly what he had feared, and he immediately asked for a status update on the eastern region. The officer said it was too early for details, but they knew our boy was there. However, no one had seen the big idiot. The general wondered if that reckless protagonist was actually planning to take on a horde by himself. He ordered the officer to gather more information while he watched the advancing army. The young soldier was motivated, saying that if he was going to die, he wanted it to be a glorious death. Meanwhile, on the eastern barrier, the troops all had their swords in hand, saying the same thing. They were eager to die protecting the nation. Then someone rushed out of a tent and announced that the lunatic Jia Yi was charging into battle alone. Our boy leaped off the wall with his sword while the soldiers shouted that it was too dangerous. However, when they saw that it was him, the loyal ones immediately took a step back, deciding it was best not to get involved too much. Lindsay prepared an attack with his sword and unleashed a flaming wave, setting the horde ablaze. In just 1 second, the entire area was covered in smoke, and he kept charging toward the horde. The soldiers who were watching started feeling like cowards for not helping. Then, one by one, they left the base, saying they couldn't just let him handle everything alone. The entire army advanced and began slaying zombies. Amidst the chaos, our boy was creating water vortexes, pulling in the undead. His energy kept dropping from the excessive use of magic, so he pulled out a small chair and some tea to recover. But right then, a fat zombie launched a venomous attack. He simply closed his teacup, appeared behind the zombie, and delivered a solid kick. Then, cutting down another one with his sword, he muttered that things were still too easy. However, more and more zombies were closing in from behind. He extended his hand, activating the water vortex, which engulfed a massive number of zombies. Once they were all gathered, he created a fireball and blew them all up. He even leveled up while the soldiers stood there in shock. Among the horde, a bearded zombie was watching, trying to understand how a single human could take on so many creatures. He was starting to worry that he might have to sacrifice a quarter of the entire horde just to deal with this person. The problem was that if he delayed too long, reinforcements would arrive and everything would fall apart. The operation couldn't fail because of one human. Since modified zombies weren't working, he decided to send as many creatures as possible at once. However, Lin Zi had bought a distraction scarecrow from the shop. He placed it on the ground, the zombies immediately swarmed it, and he slipped away with ease. The only issue was that some of the creatures were starting to advance toward the gates. Even with all his power, he couldn't stop the advance from all directions. Judging by the increasing number of creatures, the northern region was likely reaching its limit as well. He crouched down, leaped into the air, and activated the city's medallion. At the same time, he had to consume a spiritual potion. The medallion began radiating a purple aura, and the zombies looked frightened. The golden lightning bolt cut through the sky as our boy pointed at them. The explosion could be seen from anywhere on the battlefield. Some soldiers took it as a divine omen. Our boy then landed, eager to see the medallion's results. Among the zombie horde, a purple spirit surrounded by lightning had appeared. The soldiers, afraid of getting caught in its attack, immediately ran. Meanwhile, Lindsay simply observed as it advanced. It was a Saint Silent in its ghostly form. Even Lindsay was impressed. It was a legendary ranked creature. The way it looked at him made him wonder if it had a consciousness and could understand him. But there was no time to test that out. There were too many creatures. He used his mind control technique to make the Kylan charge into the zombies. A single lightning strike spread through all of them. Lindsay realized that this was the perfect element to deal with these monsters. The summon leaked again, continuing to spam its energy. Meanwhile, the zombies clutched their heads, dying. The little dragon was even smiling, having fun. The monsters, obviously, weren't enjoying it nearly as much. It looked like not a single one of them had survived. Our boy gained 2 levels, jumping straight to 26. The Kylan hovered over the city, cleaning up zombies all around. But soon, the mist began to fade. The creature turned into a crystal and shattered completely. At least it lasted long enough for our boy to reach level 27. The other players were celebrating since the crystal was still intact. One girl, however, was shocked that the top-ranked player had jumped straight to level 27. And as always, our boy obtained some items. One was a thunder element orb that he could use on the trigrams to learn or predict an element. The other was a dragon scale that increased health regeneration and boosted lightning damage. For him, this was the perfect combination. He wondered if he could rip off a scale every time he summoned the dragon and make an entire armor out of it. But even so, there were still some zombies left in the city. He noticed that they seemed a bit more hesitant now. The only strange thing was that the dragon had wiped them out so thoroughly that he hadn't received any drops. To strengthen himself, he decided to use the scale immediately. Upon activation, it fused into his chest, forming a dragon emblem. His stats increased along with his regeneration. Now that the zombies had retreated, he decided to head to other areas. Meanwhile, the army guys were happy to fight alongside him. Of course, some were mourning the countless fallen comrades. But now it was time to reorganize and try to assist the other regions. The people defending the crystal were shocked by the merit rankings. One girl commented that it was impossible for the top player to have such a massive lead. Meanwhile, in another part of the zombie invasion, a bat-like creature was approaching. The only ones capable of dealing with a bat-like creature were the mages, who began launching their spells into the sky. Meanwhile, the general in this region was asking if reinforcements had been called because they were on the verge of losing control. Just as he was issuing his orders, the entire ground began to shake. He turned towards the source of the rumbling, where smoke was rising, and suddenly, zombies started emerging from the ground. Amidst the battle, soldiers and players were fighting side by side. The creatures coming from underground were massive, and sword strikes weren't doing anything against them. Meanwhile, spells continued lighting up the sky as they fought off the flying monsters. But ahead, yet another wave of creatures was advancing. The general ordered them to hold the region because the crystal was right behind them, and they couldn't let anything through. The soldiers charged forward, took their positions in front of the monsters, and raised their shields. The mages continued casting fireballs, but one of the giants swung its massive fist and sent an entire squad of soldiers flying. Man, these shields were more of a liability than a help. They were being grabbed and tossed like ragdolls. The creatures kept advancing while the captain from above shouted for them to hold their ground, promising reinforcements were on the way. The artist decided to make his job easier by introducing a new creature, the transparent zombie. It was invisible, even to us. They started pouring water on the ground because that was the only way to see the footprints of these creatures. They encircled the crystal with water while watching for movement behind them. A soldier was about to say something when he suddenly took a blow to the neck and collapsed to his knees. One player was panicking when suddenly a spinning hammer flew through the air and crashed into the street, smashing the monster into oblivion. When they turned to look, it was the big idiot arriving, all swagged out. At that moment, he was being controlled by Lin Z, who was nearby to make sure the crystal wasn't destroyed. He advanced, cutting through both the massive zombies and the invisible ones. His presence gave the troops a renewed chance at victory. But right then, something moved at incredible speed, heading straight for the crystal. The monster moved so fast that its skin color changed as it attacked. Just before it reached the crystal, a spinning hammer struck its leg from behind. The creature fell dead, and the big idiot let out a roar before charging back into the brawl. The players and soldiers formed ranks in front of the crystal. The battle continued until, sometime later, the area was completely empty. Everyone was wiping off sweat, and there was even a blonde guy there full of swag, named Enjoying. An army officer told him he could rest after fighting so hard. The players were all praising him, saying they had seen him fight a zombie alone, and it was incredible. He didn't say a word. Apparently, this guy was mute. He sat down to rest when someone approached. It was the big idiot, and the others thought they might know each other. But suddenly, the big idiot raised his hammer and smashed him into the ground. Everyone was shocked, but then his body began to change. In the pool of blood, a thin, frail creature appeared. It was a parasite that could take control of a person's body and use all of their attributes. The only flaw was that it couldn't speak. Everyone finally understood why Enjoying had responded to anyone. Our boy called for the big idiot and said it was time to move to the next region. With that, he released control of him and the scene shifted to General Zhang's battlefield. Countless zombies lay scattered on the ground and seemed like with the army's help, he had managed to hold that part. The problem was that right at that moment, he received a message saying the defenses were reaching their limit and the area was completely destroyed. He ordered the troops to retreat to another defensive line, but the young soldier next to him said that was insane. He pointed out the risks of trying to escape at that moment, but the general insisted they had no choice. It was the only way to maximize their chances of survival. Then he turned to the side and saw our boy approaching, hands in his pockets full of swag. Tears welled up in the young soldier's eyes as he cheered, saying they didn't need to retreat anymore because he had arrived. Even the general celebrated, and right then, our well-drawn boy leaped straight into the battlefield. The general just stood there looking like a fool, realizing that the kid always ignored him. But now both of them were pumped. It was time for the counterattack. A blonde soldier stood at the front, declaring that he would give his life for the city. But our boy placed a hand on his shoulder and asked him to report the current situation. The soldier explained that they had held the line for a long time, but the front ranks had reached their limits. Of the 50,000 troops, only 10,000 remained and most of them were already exhausted. Our boy was surprised that zombies were still spawning in this area. Good thing he had arrived just in time. Then some army guys, who probably spent most of their time playing Call of Duty at home, showed up looking all clean, saying they were ready to fight alongside him. Lindsay summoned his spear, activated its fire effect, enchanted it with magic, and charged into the zombie horde. One attack to the ground, and the creatures were more eager to run than to fight. The spear's effect caused bubbles to form inside the creatures, which grew larger and then exploded from the inside out. The entire region was quickly becoming desolate. Our boy finished off another one, pulled his spear back, spun it, and unleashed a wave of flames. One attack hit the horde directly, and then he hurled the spear into the chest of another giant. Man, the thing pierced right through, went flying into the distance, exploded, and then returned to his hand. This thing is hacked, isn't it? While the Call of Duty guys stood there frozen in shock, our boy charged toward the army. A short while later, he had reached level 29, surrounded by a field of dead zombies. The soldiers were terrified by how he just kept leveling up. Meanwhile, Lindsay noticed that his inventory was getting ridiculously full. Since he couldn't even feed the sword anymore, he started throwing stuff away. At that moment, General Zhang and the military saluted our boy, saying he had saved everyone's lives. Our boy shrugged it off, saying it was no big deal, and even left some items behind on the battlefield for them. Then he walked away. Sometime later, he was in a cabin, flipping through the books he had received. One of them granted a random ability, and he begged the Holy Dragon to bless his luck. When he opened it, he gained the Scarlet Pupil ability. His eyes now had a zoom effect, allowing him to see distant objects, and on top of that, he could create mental illusions in people's retinas. He figured the ability must have been good since he had prayed to the purple dragon. Immediately, he activated the ability, only to feel a sharp pain in his face. Every time this bastard learns a skill, his eyes start bleeding. The system congratulated him, and he looked at his hands, now boasting a full 1080 vision. He glanced at a mirror and activated the Scarlet Pupil. With that, he could see the general way over there. Man, this eye was even better than he had imagined. Then the system announced that there were 15 minutes left before the horde ended, and our boy realized he had spent way too long suffering just to learn this skill. He grabbed a strange fire orb and disappeared from the cabin. The general was in a meeting room when our boy entered and called for him. Immediately, the guy bowed and thanked him, saying that without him, they wouldn't have survived this zombie horde. Lindsay waved it off, saying it was fine, but he wanted to know if the general knew at least 4 people in the top rankings. The general confirmed that he did, but wanted to know why. Lindsay asked him to summon those people because he would explain once they were all gathered. The general agreed, but warned that calling so many powerful figures together would attract unwanted attention. A few minutes later, the room was filled with the strongest fighters. Then our boy revealed that this entire horde had been controlled by the zombie emperor. Some looked shocked, but admitted it made sense. The attack had been way too coordinated. Then the protagonist reminded them that aside from the zombie emperor, the Lee family was also responsible. The group agreed, stating that countless people had died in the attack and they needed to get revenge. At that moment, our boy revealed that once the event ended, they would have a chance to counterattack. However, the decision would be made through a vote among the top-ranking players. If more than half of them agreed to strike back, the event would begin. Basically, this would trigger a small-scale war between the strongest fighters of both sides. If they won, all the zombies in Jing City would be weakened. If they lost, everyone who participated would die, and the safe zone's reconstruction would be delayed by a whole month. The guy with the bandana believed him, while the girl questioned if they were just walking into death. Everyone was hesitant, exhausted from battle, and sure that fighting these zombies wouldn't be easy. But our boy reassured them, saying he could go alone, and they didn't need to worry. It was enough to guarantee victory. The general hesitated, but then simply nodded. With that, he ordered everyone to cooperate with the kid, though the group still didn't look too thrilled. With no other choice, they forced a smile and told him they were excited to see what he would accomplish. Just then, system messages appeared for everyone, announcing that they had successfully defended Jing City. Even the zombie emperor probably didn't know yet. The people, hearing this, cheered, realizing they had survived the night. They began charging toward the remaining creatures, which were now fleeing. Of course, Lin Zai ranked first. A system message appeared, asking if he wanted to initiate the counterattack. He clicked yes, and immediately, the message confirmed that all 10 top-ranked players had accepted. Watching the troops move out, the captain recalled a rumor about obtaining a platinum chest. This information had been purchased from the in-game store, and now he suspected that Lin Zi knew about it too, which was why he was so determined to get revenge. With that, the entire city began buzzing with the news of the counterattack. People were excited, saying that just defending all the time was too boring. Now they had the chance to go on the offensive and show what humanity was capable of. A giant system window appeared, broadcasting the battle to everyone. And in the middle of the arena, our boy and his monster had already appeared. The zombies emerging looked like the aliens from Dragon Ball Z for real. Lindsay muttered that this zombie emperor of the shadow illusion was the one who had killed him in his past life. He never expected to encounter him this early. In the future, any zombie surpassing level 90 would receive the title of emperor. Additionally, upon reaching this level, they would also gain the ability to control any creature they wanted. Before dying, our boy, along with the war gods, signed a combat alliance. Of the 9 war heroes, 3 were from the government, 3 from the Lee family, and 3 belonged to no faction. The problem with having no faction was that basically no one cared what happened to you. Some people wanted to help, while others wanted to take advantage of them and ruin their lives. And since our boy had grown too strong, the Lee family hired other players to kill him before he got out of control. But today, the emperor who orchestrated this whole plan would die by his hands. The system then showed that the fight would be to the death. Each side would send one participant who could use any type of weapon or equipment. The competition would end when all participants on one side were dead. Our boy stood there staring at the horde, and that emperor who had watched him fight was already trembling in fear. None of the enemies stepped forward, and the system announced that if they didn't send someone, one would be chosen at random. At that moment, the first fighter, a zombie with dragon wings, jumped into the arena. Lindsay thought they were underestimating him since they sent a level 18 zombie. He drew his sword and the zombie immediately started running. Our boy noticed that it was trying to buy time, but he dashed in and slashed. The body hit the ground and the dumb zombie crowd was in shock. Man, this zombie was ugly as hell, seriously. They realized they had to change their plans and couldn't hesitate. Right then, a huge gray brute appeared in the arena. Our boy was impressed. It was a hybrid creature. It seemed like they had figured out they couldn't play around anymore, but that still wouldn't be enough to win. He charged forward and slashed straight at its chest, but the creature looked completely unharmed. Our boy activated a technique with his sword and managed to pierce its stone-like chest, but the blade got stuck. He saw that the creature looked confident, but that wouldn't be enough. He twisted his sword and tore a chunk off its shoulder. He sidestepped, activated an aura on his blade, and leaped at the creature again while the zombies seemed to be chanting. Strangely, everyone covered their faces, talking about some kind of ritual. A deep cut appeared on everyone's heads, and that giant T was bleeding. The brute stretched out its arms, saying this was for the zombies. Then it ripped a piece off the first zombie's head and started devouring it. The system explained that this was a forbidden ritual, where the consumed lost all their power, while the consumer grew stronger. Lindsay had never seen anything like it before, but he knew he had to end it quickly. He launched a green slash at the brute, but the monster activated an extreme defense. The attack landed, but the creature had closed its arms in defense. However, our boy sent a tiny sword that slipped between its defenses and exploded inside. Yet even after that, the creature still stood firm. But in that moment, the vortex had been placed at its feet. Our boy rushed in, slashing with his flaming sword. Finally, the creature took some damage, and he even received an item called the Stone Jar. The item granted an ability that surrounded the body with a defensive barrier, but had a 98-hour cooldown. While our boy was checking the system, a foul presence approached. It was a disgusting, rotten zombie. Lindsay simply muttered that this one wouldn't last as long as the last. He drew his sword, saying he needed to speed things up and stop the ritual, then struck. A massive green slime rose up with a monster at its center. But our boy could see the weakness of this technique using his new eye. He unleashed another sequence of attacks, hitting the exact weak spot, and with that, the creature seemed to die. This time, instead of receiving anything decent, he got a horrible potion. He called for the monsters to come at him already, but their leader was busy consuming everyone. Then the boss stood up and declared that it was too late because he would be killed. But Lindsay just replied that if it weren't for the arena's barrier, the zombie wouldn't even be speaking. The creature took a few steps forward, and finally he stood face to face with the Emperor of the Wind, a gold-ranked boss, level 24, plus 8 extra levels from consuming his allies. Our boy was excited. Someone with such high stats would surely drop a great item. Then he hesitated because the system warned that he was entering a high-risk duel. Since he was going to risk his life, he figured he might as well get rewarded. Then Balloonhead muttered that he never imagined his plans would be ruined by a single human. Lindsay started wondering if the damn Lee family had already been collaborating with the zombies at this point. Now it made sense why the attack started the moment they tried to escape, and even the bosses appeared. Suddenly, the creature broadcasted a message to all humans, calling itself Hu Feng. It declared that its race would slaughter all humans, including the so-called heroes sent to stop them. But our boy was standing right there, activating his fire technique. A green sphere formed around the zombie, and our boy charged forward. The monster was surprised by his courage and took off into the sky. Our boy, who loved provoking, asked if the creature was really going to run before the fight even started. At that moment, the zombie switched to Wen techniques, slammed the ground, and raised a barrier against our boy's flames. He seemed to be struggling to resist, and in the background, our boy said this was easier than he expected. From within the zombie's attack, his sword sliced through and struck the creature right in the chest. The monster staggered back, and our boy was pushed away by the wind barrier. The monster tried to take a moment to recover, but it was already too late. Lindsay was already closing in again. He delivered another slash, but suddenly, the creature teleported to the skies. Lindsay smirked, saying that all he wanted was to force this ability out since it always saved the monster from death. The creature wondered how a human who had no idea who he was could know about this ability. With no way out, he realized he had to fight with everything he had until the very end and launched another attack. Our boy hurled his sword like a boomerang, and it collided directly with the monster's attack. The boss already had blood dripping from its nose from how much energy it was burning. It activated another technique and sent it toward Lindsay. Lindsay was impressed that the creature could use two skills at once. It looked like this fight would last a while. Or maybe not, because the monster suddenly collapsed, exhausted from spending too much mana. Our boy at least acknowledged that it must have had strong mental abilities to pull that off. Seeing the creature stand up with its eyes closed, he wondered if it had lost consciousness. Everyone in the city was watching as our boy said he would end this suffering. He created a barrier, and even though the zombie had surrounded itself with a wall of wind, he simply stepped inside the attack. At the same moment, he activated the scarlet pupil and observed the creature in the middle of the vortex. He noticed that the monster was almost consuming itself from how much energy it was trying to use. Afraid of losing his reward, he immediately activated his boot's teleportation and appeared right in front of it. He drew his sword and slashed its head clean off. With that, he deactivated his eye, and the rewards started appearing. Not only did he gain 3 levels, but he also received a gold rank equipment and over 10,000 merit points, along with a global announcement. Everyone found out that he had won, but honestly, they all already knew he was the strongest anyway. Upon reaching level 30, the system announced that he could try his luck and receive a super cheat. Our boy knew that all the cheats he had received so far had been insanely good. Around the crystal, everyone was celebrating, knowing that with this victory, the zombies were weakened and even gave more experience. They knew that our boy had created the perfect opportunity for everyone to level up. At that moment, he appeared in the city with the top 10 players. The crowd wanted to thank him, but he simply ordered the big idiot to cause a distraction and ran into an alley. People commented that his fame had increased again. They all said that if he ever needed a favor, all he had to do was ask. Lindsay thanked them and told everyone to rest. They had worked hard today. Then the system congratulated all players for not only surviving the invasion, but also winning the counterattack. With that, Jing City not only secured its safe zone, but also expanded in size. There were 36 different details about how the city had improved, but to summarize, the city got stronger and that was that. Looking back, our boy saw the barrier being raised. Now that the first problem was solved, it was time to talk to the general. While everyone admired the rising barrier, a global announcement was made, congratulating our boy for being the first to kill a gold-ranked boss. The poor souls who couldn't even kill a silver-ranked boss had no idea how this was possible. Meanwhile, his fans said they expected nothing less from the one they admired most. Back at the hotel, the big idiot was eating a massive chicken drumstick while our boy rested, until he suddenly got up, saying he couldn't sleep until he knew what his super cheat would be. The ability he received was space expansion. Basically, it doubled the number of items he could store. He found it strange. Why would a simple inventory expansion be considered a super cheat? Then the system explained that it not only allowed him to interact with special space-related items, but also gave him the ability to enter his own storage like an alternate dimension. Right away, he understood why it was called a super cheat. He was thinking of getting another hotel, but now he had no reason to. He had a portable home. Then he decided to check how this new interaction with space-related items worked. The only space-related item he had was those boots that greatly increased his speed. Upon inspection, he saw that thanks to the cheat, he now took 90% less damage while accelerating. Since the buff was so powerful, he knew he needed more space-related items. So he decided to explore the new space he could enter. As soon as he activated it, a blue light appeared and a portal formed. He stepped through and found himself in a completely empty room. It looked like an ordinary void until the system window popped up. He realized he could live there comfortably. He opened his inventory, pulled out a sofa card, and started setting up his new room. Besides that, one new item stood out, a liquid extracted from the ritual zombies. Its effect was that, since it strengthened zombies, it was also extremely good at attracting them. He recognized it from his past life. It was the perfect item for anyone who wanted to negotiate with zombies since they would trade anything to get stronger. Obviously, there was always some foolish human wondering what happens if I drink this. You'd immediately turn into a fully corrupted creature or half-zombie, half-human mess and die like an idiot. But our boy had the big idiot, the perfect person to test this. He stepped out of the teleport and appeared back in his room. He called his friend and told him to take a sip. What? The thing looked extremely toxic, but when opened, It just looked like regular water. Without hesitation, the monster glutton took a sip and began glowing with a blue aura. The system then congratulated him for ranking at the top and announced that he would receive a reward. He told it to hurry up and show what he got. It seemed to be a lightning technique, but it was only for the magic class, making it useless for him. The gold rank item he received from the event was the Ring of Elements. It increased spiritual power and boosted mana recovery. He sat on the bed and told the system to open the other reward windows. Where did these come from? I don't know either, but hey, they arrived. Our boy cheered as he received a dagger and a ring. The dagger was gold rank and